An entitled Karen spills her beer all over my wife's feet while we're at a concert. But instead of owning up to it and admitting she was wrong, she decided to turn around and pretend like it didn't happen. So I got some revenge by literally pouring an entire cup of beer all over her seat, forcing her to sit in wet beer the entire show, leaving her entire lower body absolutely soaked. Here's what happened. So we were at the recent Wu-Tang Clan show at Madison Square Garden the other night, and this small group of people in front of us seemed to be having a great time. It was an odd pairing of two middle-aged folks and what I'm assuming was their 30-something-year-old daughter. Honestly, I'm not really sure. Anyways, you could tell that she was a type, taking selfie videos every 5 minutes, and had no idea why she was there other than to party, which to be fair, that's fine, and I don't really care if people do it regardless of how cringy I find it. But she was flailing herself around and dancing like she was next to Oracle of Delphi, and this is where we had a problem. She had set a large beer cup on her seat, and my wife's seat was right behind hers. Well, about 1 minute after she set it there, she did one of her prophecy reading maneuvers and actually knocked the beer over backwards onto my wife's feet and filling one of her shoes partially. It also splashed over onto one of my buddies sitting in the row on the other side of my wife's seat. This woman child looked back at me and my wife in horror for 1 second, realized that she messed up, and then decided that she was going to go on about her business and ignore the issue completely. She did not apologize, she did not acknowledge it, she just kept on going. And this was the moment that upset me the most. Sure, getting a beer down your shoe sucks, but what really sucks is when the person who does it has absolutely no remorse for what they had done, accident or not, and just chooses not to apologize. So I did what any normal person would do in that situation. I picked up the beer cup, I removed the lid, and I dumped it all over her seat, and a small amount over the front of her feet as well. She looked back for a brief second when her feet got wet, and we met our eyes, as I was doing my best customer service style smile for her while holding the now empty beer cup over her seat. She quickly looked away and continued her dancing, choosing to continue to ignore the situation. Now the best part was her knowing she couldn't sit down, but also not wanting to tell the two that she was with about what had happened, because she had already accepted mentally that she wasn't going to admit fault. So she stood there awkwardly when the other two sat down, and after a minute, the guy pulled her down into her seat after she was hesitating for so long. The beer was oozing out of the cushion the second she sat down, and she convulsed and writhed around in the beer chair for a minute while being held into it by her male companion, all before standing up with a completely soaked butt full of beer. Her pants were wet from the belt line down past her knees. She continued to get pulled down into her seat by the guy multiple other times before the show ended. Now, I don't really think I've had a small petty revenge work out so well in my favor before, so to be completely honest, it was quite thrilling. Thankfully, I was able to put a smile on my wife's face after she saw her stand back up the first time, because this idiot absolutely deserved it. Oh man, this lady deserved it. This wasn't even petty revenge, this was so needed. This lady literally knocked her beer all over you guys, and instead of being like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, or even something similar, she decides to be like, oh yeah, this isn't happening, and just continues dancing. It's like, dude, what are you doing? At least show some level of common courtesy. Don't sit there and be like, oh yeah, this is not happening, nothing to worry about here. So in my opinion, the fact that you emptied your beer cup all over her seat was completely necessary, because this Karen, in my opinion, got exactly what she deserved. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for refusing to keep helping out my mom after I was pushed out of my job when she sold the company? Because right now, she's saying that I owe her simply because I'm her daughter, and at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, for a bit of context, I was working in my mom's office for 7 years, managing everything and also helping my mom with anything written down, as she's not native to the country we live and worked at together. That would mean writing papers, correcting her grammar, etc., so that she would maintain a professional outlook to the outside world. And this is nothing much of work, honestly, especially when it came to writing, as I was born and raised here. I know it's not easy for an immigrant to adapt to a new culture and still be successful in her career. It's been over 30 years now for her, and she's basically fluent speaking, went to become a business owner, and managed to build a house, which can be very expensive in the area we live in. A couple of months ago, she sold her business but stayed there as an employed CEO. The new owner decided that I was not needed anymore, and for the sake of selling it, she went along with it. Meanwhile, I took over my dad's business, which was being abandoned for years due to his dementia, and I'm trying to build everything up from scratch while also taking care of him, as I live close by to him. My parents live separately, so she can't really see him every day due to the distance of her work and living environment, and also, I'm the one in charge of family finances, taxes, etc., and this is for the both of them on top of all of this. But now, my mom wants me to keep helping her writing papers and letters remotely. And you know what? I refused, pointing out that I'm no longer part of her workforce and that I have a lot of other obligations to attend to. She keeps getting angry at me, telling me that it's my duty as her daughter to help her out, that she pays for the house with the money that she makes, and that I'm the one benefiting from it as I will inherit parts of it. So she says she's obliged to demand for me to partake, which means coming in on weekends to check her work for now, and then later on working from a laptop remotely to proofread everything. I told her that's a task that she now has to give somebody else, which she refuses, partly to save her face, but also because she's not good at handling giving direct orders to others besides me, I guess. Also, this takes away from my free time, not to mention having to adapt to their new software and network environment, which by the way, I'm not even getting paid for. So am I the jerk for drawing a line? Because right now I'm honestly incredibly frustrated. Dude, your mom threw you under the bus the second she sold that company off. She literally sacrificed her kids so that she could sell the company and make a quick buck. But now she's realizing, oh crap, my daughter is the reason all of this worked. Like, you literally were the quiet person in the background holding all of this together. And now that you're not doing that stuff that you used to do, she's now trying to guilt trip you into doing it as some kind of like, oh, you owe me. You're my daughter. You're gonna get part of my house and inheritance. And that is crazy toxic in my opinion. Like, dude, what's going on? At least in the previous setup, you were getting paid for your services. Now she wants you to do it for free on your free time on the weekends. Like, absolutely not. You better hire somebody else to do that because that is not okay with me. So to the original poster, no, you are definitely not the jerk because I would do the exact same thing. Today, I messed up by disclosing my coworker's salary to the wrong person, causing a butterfly effect of so many bad things happening to me that honestly is making me regret the next 3 weeks I have to work at this job. Here's what's going on. To start things out, I'm changing jobs and relocating in about 3 weeks. In my current position, I was working interim open positions for my company until a permanent full-time worker got hired, and my company didn't compensate me much for these roles. As a matter of fact, the boss paid me less than what was verbally agreed upon, and when I asked about it, she replied, oh, I said up to this certain amount, which was, by the way, a complete lie. She verbally told me something that was much higher, and this is all my fault for agreeing to all of this and for continuing to show up and give 100% of myself. Currently, all the roles have been filled, and I'm back to the role that I was initially hired for. Well, the new employee told me her salary. I didn't even have to ask her, and you know what? I was crushed, which then leads me to how I messed up. I vented to a coworker who had been there for over 20 years and has a higher rank than a new employee. I ranted about my salary and the new employees and how it was not fair, how the company sucks and all this other stuff. Well, the coworker slash supervisor I was ranting to became livid. She began to rant and vent that the new employee is making about $1 less than her. The coworker then tells me that she is calling the CEO so that she can vent to them and perhaps get a raise for herself since it's been 4 years. She also told me about how much of a better job I've done with these interim roles and that the company pretty much screwed me over. Now, I didn't know any of the following had happened, and quite frankly, I forgot about the salary thing, but all of this was about 2 weeks ago. But yesterday, in the meantime, the coworker I talked to proceeded to email the CEO and forward the message to the Human Resources Director. The Human Resources Director tells the boss, who then tells the new employee that a supervisor emailed the CEO upset about her salary. And because of this, the new employee confronts me about it. She doesn't know which supervisor emailed the CEO. She just knows that she told me about her salary and that she had her secretary handle paperwork with her salary information. And while I listened and denied everything, I felt so humiliated. I went to the coworker and I pretty much called her an idiot for exposing me, but her excuse was that she thought I had already relocated and would not be exposed. I told her that if anyone comes to me, I will deny we had a conversation. Well, next week she will be on a vacation for a month, and I have 3 weeks left of this job and I intend to complete them. But I really feel like a total jerk for getting emotional and venting to the wrong person. I do truly feel bad for the new employee, as it's not her fault because she really deserves her rate. But either way, that's a lesson learned because I will never make that mistake twice ever again. Okay, honestly, I think the whole situation where it's like, oh, you can't talk about your salary with anybody else, like that's incredibly stupid and really dumb. Because then you get situations like this. You have a supervisor who's only making $1 more than this like low-level entry employee. And I don't know about you, but that's really messed up. So honestly, I would not beat yourself up over this. Because if this new employee has any problems with you, they should take it up with the company they're working for and not with you. Because clearly they're not paying people fair, and that is absolutely not your fault. An entitled jerk manspreads in a way that literally takes up all my space, forcing me to get my spouse involved, who absolutely shuts him down. Here's what happened. Okay, so my wife and I are currently on a nearly 8-hour flight. We are in the premium section where you get somewhat larger seats and way more legroom. It's not as cushy as first class, but it's way better than economy. Now, I'm in my 30s, I'm 5'10", and I'm plus size. I'm always so careful to make sure I'm not taking anyone's space on a plane, even if it is uncomfortable. I'm supposed to be in a middle seat, but when I get there, there's already already a man sitting in the middle spot next to who I can only assume is his wife, so I just take the aisle seat, which is no big deal. I prefer that, to be completely honest, and my spouse was seated a couple of rows away. Now the man looks like he's probably 5'4", in his 70s, and has a small build. In a premium seat, he basically has a swimming pool of space to lounge around in. So tell me why this man, who took up my entire armrest and about 4 inches of my space, had his entire body pressed against mine, despite me seeing that he had room between him and his wife, and most egregious of all, put his one foot like 6 inches into my leg room. Also, at one point, he motioned like he was trying to get at his seatbelt, but just kind of ended up pinching at my upper thigh, but then didn't even put his seatbelt on. It's like gross. He also had AirPods in and seemed to be pretending to sleep. Plus, being a woman sitting alone means that I don't trust how he would react if I said something. My first step was to put my foot exactly on the border of my seat when he readjusted. That way, he couldn't take the space back. But you know what? He put his foot directly against mine, and every 20 seconds or so, he would bump his foot against mine again and again. Well, I started texting my spouse, and she does the coolest thing ever. She tells me she'll trade seats with me, and if he tries the same thing with her, she will start playing footsies with him. Now, here's the thing about my wife you really need to know. My wife is a 6'4" bearded trans woman. She has a voice like Johnny Cash, and to a creepy man in his 70s, this will absolutely read as male. So if this guy wants to intimidate a woman, he can do it to someone who will dish it out right back at them, but 5 times creepier. Well, I told her not to worry, and that I would put a blanket between us as it was no big deal. So the blanket goes down, his foot immediately retreats, but then this guy starts tapping his foot to the music, but he's doing it pressed up against my foot. So he's basically just rubbing my foot up and down with his foot. I then yanked my foot back instinctively because I felt like I was going to puke. I then sicked my wife on him, and bless her heart, she was absolutely willing to swap seats and put this guy in his place. Wow, this guy is a piece of garbage. First of all, your wife is awesome for wanting to switch seats and shut this guy down, because yes, he's being super creepy. He's getting a little too touchy-feely in my opinion, and that absolutely is not okay. So yeah, this guy was a creep, and I'm so sorry I had to deal with that because that was completely inappropriate. An entitled jerk tries to trick me one too many times into giving him free drinks. This guy even goes as far as saying that he's entitled to one by law, despite the fact that we only give out free drinks to actual customers. Here's what's going on. Okay, so I work in an amusement arcade, and we offer free drinks and snacks for paying customers. Some people try and abuse this by coming in, asking for something, and then they leave once they have it. Or we've also had supposed homeless people coming in, asking for drinks and snacks because they're homeless. When I first started and wasn't so savvy, a guy came in and asked for a coffee, and not knowing any better, I gave him a coffee, whereafter he just walked out immediately. The same guy came in this morning and went straight to the customer toilet where he spent 10 minutes, all before coming out and politely asking for a Coke. I say to him, sure, take a seat and I'll bring it over once you're playing. And I said that as I carried on filling in my paperwork. He then went out and sat down and just sat rubbing his eyes. 5 minutes later, he came back to the bar and said, my mouth is so dry. Can I have a Coke now, please? And he asked me with a big smile on his face. I said to him, well, sure, once you're playing. And I repeated this politely. The smile disappeared from his face as he said, I'm entitled to a drink by law. But I shot back at him and I said, no, you're not. They're for paying customers only. But he repeated himself, saying he's entitled by law to have one. But I just politely said back, no, you're definitely not. They're for playing customers and you haven't played yet. Start playing and you can have a drink. He then turned around and headed to the door, telling me to go F myself, and I followed him as I needed to unlock the door. He then turned before leaving and he said to me, why won't you let me have just one Coke? But I just responded by saying they're for customers only again. And he says to me, but I am a customer. But I just said to him, well, you came in and used the toilet and you haven't played a machine. So no, the refreshments are for playing customers only. He then called me a fat idiot and said once again that he's entitled to a drink by law. But I said to him, no problem, go ahead and find a cop and report me, all before closing the door. But the best part about this is that when I went to use the toilet myself, I found out that this upstanding citizen had peed all over the floor. And honestly, I'm not surprised by this behavior. Oh man, this guy was either homeless or drunk or somewhere in between, because this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Imagine going into a place and taking advantage of some guy who's new, only to then go in the next day and be like, oh, I deserve one. Why can't you give me a Coke just this one time? And it's like, oh, I don't know, buddy. Maybe it's because you stole a coffee yesterday and now you're trying to get a Coke from me. Like, people like this really get under my skin. Why can't you pay for the Coke like everybody else? Like, if you're playing the games and you're actually there for the right reasons, then sure, you can get it for free. But you're not doing that. You're literally just trying to cheat the system and take advantage of it. You're trying to steal without saying the word, oh yeah, I'm stealing. So honestly, good for you for the way you handled this, because this guy was an entitled piece of garbage. My idiotic company has a stupid travel policy that costs me way more money than it should have. So I decided to maliciously comply by returning the favor in a way that they will never figure out, costing them hundreds of dollars in the process. Here's how I did it. A few months ago, I had to travel for work. Some cost-saving measures had been implemented recently, and I was required to have a funding letter from the financial department so that they could allocate funds appropriately, even though my travel was authorized by my supervisor and required for the company business. And it's like, okay, I'll jump through some hoops, whatever. I get the funding letter and travel a couple of hours to my home away from home. Halfway through my trip, my work schedule opens up as I have a few days off, but I know I will be working more the following week. Since I'm only a few hours from home, I decide to check out of my hotel, drive home to spend the weekend with my family, then drive back the following week when I actually have work to do. This saves the company paying for a few days for the hotel and per diem, and I get time with my family. This is a win-win, right? Well, no, this is completely wrong. When I submit my travel claim to financial, it counts it as 2 separate trips. The problem is, I have one funding letter, which covers the dates of my travel but doesn't cover 2 trips, even though both trips are inside the travel window in the funding letter. This then blows up and takes about a month and a half to get sorted out, during which time I had to pay off my company credit card for the travel expenses incurred using my own funds. Eventually, the money was all properly allocated, and I got reimbursed for my interest-free loan to the company. But you know what? After that, I learned my lesson. Another trip comes up, and I am issued one funding letter. I drive up again and work a few days, and sure enough, my schedule opens up and I have some days off. But this time, instead of checking out of my hotel, I just leave, drive home, and I'm now sitting on my couch typing this while the company pays my per diem and pays for an empty hotel room. And you know what? I'm pretty sure the bean counters will get a raise for their fine work, because honestly, cheers to them, as they literally wasted a lot of money for no reason. Oh my god, this is so stupid. Like, seriously, these people must love spending money. Why not just have it all just like in one package thing and not be like, oh, that's 2 separate trips, sorry. Like, they're literally just making this entire thing way more difficult than they need to. So good for you for maliciously complying, because this travel policy is absolutely stupid. Today, I dealt with 2 entitled boomers who honestly were the absolute worst, as they were rude, loud, and incredibly aggressive, forcing me to shut them down by giving them the cold shoulder. Here's how I did it. Okay, so this happened about an hour ago, and I'm so glad I finally have a story I can share. For starters, I'm helping out a friend at his restaurant because he had to fire 4 employees back to back due to them stealing. And this is honestly no big deal, as I have some free time. Well, to start things out, the first boomer male comes storming up to me while my hands are full of margarita mix, saying to me, hello, are you gonna seat me or do I have to sit wherever I want? Now, I saw this man walk in literally 15 seconds ago and stand right in front of the please wait to be seated sign, so I told this first boomer, we'll be with you in a moment, go ahead and wait by the sign that says please wait to be seated. Boomer number 1 scoffs and waits by the sign, and I sat him very shortly afterwards, and then I moved on with my life. Well, 15 minutes later, I walked past his table, and I noticed that he had met up with a male boomer friend who is boomer number 2 in this story. As I walk past this table, boomer number 2 literally shouts at me, excuse me, sir, sir, which may to some extent seem normal, but not only is yelling inside a restaurant wild behavior, I'm also not a sir. I am a woman with a very obvious chest. So I made eye contact and I ignored him, because there's no way this man was talking to me. I then just walked past like I was suddenly deaf. I then walked past a few minutes later, and boomer number 2 starts hooting and hollering again, saying, hello, excuse me, sir, which was again promptly ignored because again, yelling inside is incredibly rude. After my second time ignoring these empty-headed boomers, they visibly started sulking in their seats. So I guess not being given the attention they are so clearly starving sucked the life right out of them, and hopefully taught them some kind of lesson about manners. Oh man, that's super cringy, man. Like, why would you yell in a restaurant like that? That doesn't make any sense to me, dude. Just wait your turn. This guy walked up 15 seconds in, is like, oh my god, do I have to be seated or do I sit down myself? And then the other guy's trying to be like, sir, come over here. And it's like, dude, this is obviously a woman we're talking to. Why are you being so aggressive and rude off rip? Like, this is not a good look, buddy. So honestly, I love the fact that you ignored them and kept on walking, because if they want to be rude, then congratulations, you get to ignore them and go about your day. 2 entitled Karens demand to know why there's hair in their sandwich that they bought, despite the fact that there literally is no hair in it, and instead it's just the way the food looks. Here's how it all went down. Okay, so this situation happened the other day. It was my last table for the day before I got off at 4 o'clock, and at this table were the 2 entitled Karens of the story. Now honestly, things were fine. They ordered food and they ended up splitting a steak and cheese. I brought it out, and within a minute of it being on the table, one of the ladies stopped me. She said to me, there is a hair in this, with the other lady saying, yeah, there's definitely a hair. I look at the sandwich and I immediately recognize it as cheese, not hair. For anyone who knows their cheese, you'll know that provolone cheese on hot sandwiches, when they stretch thin enough, look remarkably like hair. I eat this sandwich all the time, so I'm certain that it is just cheese. I say to him, oh no, that's cheese. I have this sandwich often, and the cheese often does look like that sometimes. The second lady says to me, no, it's hair, and here's another one too. At this point, she's taken the pieces off and just handed them to me. And at that point, I definitely definitely could confirm that it was in fact cheese. I was even able to break it with the slightest touch, which I would not be able to do even with a stray hair unless you pull on it. So I say to them, ma'am, this is cheese. Provolone just gets like this. Lady number 1 says, that's definitely hair and it needs to be remade and checked for hair. I say to them, ma'am, no one blonde has worked here today in the entire bar, and all of the cooks have black hair, but they didn't care and they said it's definitely hair, even though it definitely wasn't. I even got the sandwich for myself later on and it was the same result. Even when we remade it had the same result. The worst part was that they were splitting the sandwich, but only she noticed it on her half. And since we can't just make half a sandwich, the cooks had to make a whole sandwich, so they basically got more than what they paid for. Now, the craziest part of all of this is that they tipped like 33%, which is like the most confusing thing that's ever happened to me in my life. Like, I looked you in the eyes and broke the customer service rule to tell you that you're wrong. Why are you tipping me that much money? I'm still blown away by all this because these people were incredibly confusing. Okay, honestly, someone made a really good point in the comment section by basically saying they did a 33% tip as like some kind of apology. Because yeah, these people are idiots. Sometimes provolone does that, and that's definitely not hair. Because what restaurant in their right mind would give out a sandwich full of blonde hair and nobody sees it? Like, that's crazy. That really is so stupid. So yeah, maybe this is a super confusing situation, but maybe they did mean well by being like, oh man, we messed up. We gave that server a hard time. Let's just tip them really well and get out of here and never talk about this ever again. Like, if I was in their shoes, I probably would have done the same thing because I'm super socially awkward and there's no way I'm ever going to confront that. So either way, enjoy your 33% tip because these people were completely wrong and gave you a hard time for literally no reason. And that, in my opinion, is super inappropriate.
My wife cheated on me, and instead of acting publicly emotional, I got the most satisfying, soul-crushing revenge imaginable. I calculated everything and engineered a scenario so that she would have to give me the house, the kids, pay me child support, and subsidize the cost of my living for the rest of her life. And my plan ends with my kids seeing me as a saint and her as the evil one. Here's what I did. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. This all happened to me a few years ago. I told a friend the story of my divorce and I was told to share. We started a few years ago. I thought we were happy. We were your usual suburban professional couple. Financially secure, healthy, good adult life, 2 kids, a 14-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old boy at the time. I thought we had a healthy social life. We were going through one of your typical married couple rough patches. Both of us were working long hours, not spending enough time with each other. We were going through some developmental problems with my son and tensions in the house were running a little high. I noticed that she was spending a lot more time on her phone texting with her girlfriends. I didn't think much of it. I started making a much more concerted effort to get out of work when I could, help around the house, and be more emotionally available. But over the course of a few weeks, the gulf just kept getting wider. I ended up accidentally finding some messages when I charged an old iPad for my son to use. Her Facebook Messenger was still logged in and there were a lot of highly questionable messages with the guy from her hometown who I'll call Jim Bob Cooter, or JBC for short. The messages weren't completely inappropriate, but I could tell there were quite a few missing based on the times and the context of the messages. I made a mental note to keep an eye on this and went about trying to fix things up. The next day, I took the day off to knock out some projects that I thought would make her happy and left her some sweet notes reminding her how much I appreciated her, but she was once again in the corner of the living room texting her girlfriends. I took the boy's iPad to the office, opened up Facebook Messenger and watched in real time as my wife tore me down. Her and JBC were making fun of me. All of my flaws, insecurities, and secrets I entrusted to my partner were now fodder for her and JBC. Not only that, but while there wasn't outright sexting, there was a sexual undertone to the whole conversation, especially when she was bashing my performance in the sack. I managed to take some screenshots but missed a good bit of the messages because as the conversation was unfolding, she was deleting them. I wasn't emotionally capable of confronting her. I stayed in the office until she was asleep and had a couple of drinks. I took off work the next day and spent some time soul searching, drinking, and trying to figure out what to do. The wife came home and wanted to know what was wrong, and I just copped out and told her I had a bad day. A couple minutes later, I was watching the iPad as the train wreck kept unfolding. So began a couple of solid weeks of taking screenshots, drinking, and detaching myself from the relationship. I knew there was no going back from this. The messages were now overtly sexual with my wife completely into it, and JBC was sprinkling in I love yous. I consulted a lawyer and I got my options and started moving forward. Here's where everything got absolutely surreal. Watching the messages, I found out JBC JBC was coming to town to spend a weekend of quality time with my wife in a pretty nice hotel. I was missing a good bit of the information. They must have had a phone conversation about it at some point, but I was able to infer enough to get the when and where. And sure enough, the next day, the wife is buttering me up and wanting to take a spa weekend with the girls just to relax. And when she gets back, we can really focus on our marriage. I go with it all the way. It's the greatest idea she's ever had, and I'll do anything to get us back on track. I get with the lawyer and have him draft a strong separation agreement stating that she would move out, she would get weekend visitation, no child support in the interim until the divorce is final. Then I sit through the most agonizing 2 weeks of my life. After all this, most of my feelings for her are completely gone. I'm just seething with anger like I've never felt before. D-Day arrives. I take the day off work. I withdraw half of any money in any bank accounts we are joint on, leave her half alone. I had already redirected my paycheck to a new bank. I close our money market account and get a cashier's check for her half and deposit my half in my new account. I stop at Office Max and print out about 75 pages of Facebook Messenger screenshots, and then I kill time because I don't want to be at home. She texts me that she's taking off and that she loves me. I tell her to have fun. I show up to the hotel at about 8:30 and call the wife's phone from the lobby. It goes straight to voicemail. They're probably already at it. Whatever. I walk up to the front desk and ask if I can use the phone to be connected to JBC's room. It rings 3 times and he picks up. Hello? JBC, can you send my wife down to the lobby, please? I don't know what you're talking about, bro. Okay, then I guess I'll have to call Mrs. JBC and get her down here. Totally a bluff. I knew he was married and I knew her first name, but that was about it. JBC starts shuffling in a panic. You got 5 minutes. Click. Not even 2 minutes later, my wife comes walking out of the elevator looking a little flustered. I sit her down in the corner of the lobby. She starts spewing her nonsense, saying that it's not what it seems and blah 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 blah. I tell her, I'm not here to argue. The things that are said in this pile of papers are what's going on. The only way that I'm not giving a copy of this to our daughter, your parents, and emailing it to everyone we know is if you move out immediately. My wife was very prideful. My daughter was going through a rebellious teen phase, and her knowing probably would have forever killed their relationship. My wife was also her parents' golden child, and she was always worried about what they thought of her. I didn't have much leverage, and shame was my only card to play. Also, because her professional life is built up around her image, I knew that she would protect that at all costs. She starts sniffling and mumbling. Then I say, this is a check for half of the money in the money market account. I've withdrawn my half of the money from all the other joint accounts. You should have more than enough to get a place. She starts to cry a little. I could almost see the different thoughts and waves of emotions going through her, but now was the time to keep pressing. I then say, here is a separation agreement that I think is more than fair considering what's going on. I'm going to need you to look over this, sign it, and leave it at the house when you've got your stuff. Do you want to look through these screenshots? No. Okay, go have fun with JBC. Do not come back to the house or I'm going to send this, holding up the ream of screenshots, to everyone. I bounce out of the lobby and I can hear her start to have a breakdown. I get to the car and drive off to a parking lot and have my own crying rage fit. Previously, I would have cried in front of her and yelled and whatnot, but I managed to get my act together enough to pull it off. I don't know what she did that night or over the weekend. She texted and called over and over wanting to talk. I just turned the phone off, and by the time Monday afternoon rolled around, there were movers getting her stuff and she delivered the agreements. I let her have a talk with the kiddos, basically saying mommy and daddy need some time apart, we still love you, etc, etc. Standard divorce talk. After a week, she wants to have a real talk for the first time. I oblige her because I've already got my stuff together and I've got an idea of what I want, but I should hear her out. She's so sorry. She wants another chance. She wants her family back. She'll do anything. She's on her knees crying into my lap. I have no intention of ever taking her back, but I tell her she needs to set up marriage counseling on her own time at a time that works for me. I tell her that I can't live with her, but she should be around the children to try and maintain a relationship with them. So starts our new normal of her coming over to the house, cooking and having dinner with the kids 3 nights a week. She always saved me a plate. I made myself scarce, her cleaning the house and doing the kids' laundry, and then heading back to her place. We went to counseling. It consisted of her working through her issues with a therapist, trying to figure out why she did it, her begging for forgiveness, and me stoically playing the victim. I was never going to give her another chance. All I wanted to do was kill time, establish myself as the primary caregiver to the kids, and establish her as not having residency in the house. After a few months, I go to my own therapist and I get diagnosed with depression and PTSD. I ask my work if it's possible to go part-time for the foreseeable future to deal with personal issues, and it's no big deal. After 6 months of therapy, I told her that I couldn't forgive her right now and that I wanted an amicable divorce. But she is still the love of my life and maybe someday we could give it another try. She was devastated, but agreed to the divorce if I promised to try again someday. Once the divorce was filed, I needed the kids to want to stay with me. I left a Google search for how to survive your wife's infidelity up on the shared PC at home, and I left some printed out infidelity articles not so hidden in the kitchen. My daughter found them and came to me crying. I told her she wasn't supposed to find those, that mom made a mistake, that mom still loves her, and that I would always be there for her. My daughter, who used to hold my wife in such high regard, now wouldn't talk to her without screaming, and it crushed her. Not surprisingly, when the court needed statements from the kids a few months later, little brother followed big sister's lead and they both wanted to stay with dad in the house that they grew up in. When the divorce was finalized, I got the house. I had to buy out some of her equity, but that's okay. I got primary custody of the kids. I got awarded generous child support due to the difference in our incomes due to me working part-time. And now for the last 2 years, I've gotten to live in the house with my kids, work part-time, and get the now ex to subsidize it for me. And when she takes the kids over the weekends, I get to have my fun with Tinderellas and some friends with benefits that I've cultivated. In the eyes of my kids, I'm the patron saint of fatherhood for taking the high road and always being there. In the eyes of my ex, I'm the one that got away that she will always pine for. And I get the bonus of having her come over for friskiness whenever I wanted by dangling that carrot of maybe getting back together in front of her. But that is never going to happen. So was I the jerk for how I handled getting cheated on by my wife? The original poster here basically pulled out the Uno reverse card. I don't think you can really ever recover from being betrayed in that way and being hurt that badly, but somehow he was able to look beyond that and try to salvage anything that remained. One thing I will say is the original poster is obviously the victim here. He was hurt, he was betrayed beyond belief, and basically she was trying to make him out to be the fool. But the one thing that doesn't really sit right with me, even though she is the one who damaged the relationship, is the way that the OP handled the situation with the kids. Yes, she did break her promise to you, but that doesn't mean that all bets are off. It sounded to me like there was an understanding that she agreed to his terms, he doesn't blast her to the kids about what happened. But instead of having that next conversation, he strategically laid everything out for them to find it, so that way he could absolve himself of saying, well, I didn't tell them. But it's kind of like this version's equivalent of lying by omission. I think the kids should have a right to know, but the whole point of it was to talk about it together. At least that's what I would assume the wife would have wanted. That's the whole reason why she signed that paper. Not to never tell the kids. If that was the case, it wasn't clear. It just felt a little manipulative to the kids. But I know not everyone's going to agree with that. I know a lot of you guys probably think that he was totally in the right to do so. But anyway, besides that, this was wild. You rarely ever hear of a story working out like this. Usually it's somebody that cheats in a marriage and somehow miraculously ends up with all the prosperity to follow afterwards. The person they cheated on has to fund their lifestyle for whoever they're continuing to be with after the marriage is even over, through alimony or through divorce payouts, you name it. I think most people probably wouldn't have even understood to do this in the first place, so it makes me wonder if the lawyer is the one who told him how to do all this. Like I said a second ago, I don't think this guy will ever fully recover from this. He was going above and beyond trying to save this marriage by leaving work early when it was probably pretty difficult to do so, only to have her talking to some other guy behind his back in secrecy. And then not only that, but to physically act on it. She went to the hotel. She was in the room. It wasn't some theoretical cheating. She was actually there. So let me know how you guys see this situation. Do you think that what he did here was going too far, or do you think everything was totally justified? Let me know your thoughts down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. An HOA scams its residents for over 10 years before one person who moves in finally fights back. Here's what happened. A good friend of mine about 4 years ago inherited the house of his grandparents. He decided to live there for the time being till he's decided what he wants to do with the house. He grew up in it, so he did not really want to sell it. Not even a week after he moved in, he got a visit from a neighborhood committee. They said they are the 3 board members of the HOA, the Homeowners Association, and are here so he can sign his membership papers. They were extremely nosy and rude. For example, one tried to get into the garage without so much as asking. When he stopped him and asked him where he wanted to go, he had the audacity to say,
I need to check your garage to see if everything there is in order. I have a right to do this bi-weekly, and denying me access is an offense that will cost a fine.
He then had enough of their audacity and kicked them out of the house. While doing so, one of the board members shoved some papers into his face and told him he needed to sign this right now. At this point, he was already living there for a week, and these papers had to be signed before moving in. Once they were gone, he took a look at the papers. They were ridiculous and gave the HOA rights that were simply unreal. They had, for example, a right to visit your home bi-weekly and check things like that you do not use the garage for storage and that you didn't have gasoline in containers in your garage. You had to mow your lawn every week. Snow had to be shoveled every 2 hours when it snowed, starting at 5 o'clock in the morning. You could not park more than 1 car on your grounds except inside the garage, and a ton of other nonsense. A few days later, they came back and asked him why he did not sign the papers yet. They also wanted to check the garage again. This time, he would not even let them in and told them he would never become a member of their stupid club. To them, that meant war. Within a week, they sent him fines north of $1,000. Some of them were for denying them access to his home. Each was for $250. My friend simply did not take them seriously and used their stupid letters to help fire his grill. Then the day came where they went extremely too far. He came back and one of the board members had broken into his garage, stood in it, and was writing things down on his notepad. But that was not even the worst part. He had 2 wonderful oak trees in the front of the house. They had been planted by his great-grandparents way back when they were newlyweds and they moved into this house. The HOA was in the process of taking them down. They had called a professional crew for this. One was already so damaged, basically all twigs were already down, it was just a stump that was left. The other one he had just started with. He lost it. He told the tree crew to stop right now and explain to them that he was the owner and what they did was highly illegal. They had no idea, since the board member claimed these trees were in violation of the rules, since supposedly too many leaves went to the neighbor's garden. He told them that there was no legal reason to put them down, but the board member claimed I had given my okay because the trees were in violation of the rules of the HOA. He looked it up later. They actually had a bylaw that if a garden produces more than 1 40-liter stack of leaves within 2 weeks, the garden owner needs to take down the offending trees within 2 weeks. He told them that he would overlook them trespassing if they would be witnesses in court for him. Then he called the cops on the board members for trespassing and breaking and entering. They had actually used a bolt cutter to get into the garage. He always had it closed with a big bike lock after that, since they had tried to get in twice before. The trial must have been glorious. Not only did they have to repay him for the lock and the tree, which was worth a ton of money, north of $50,000 if I remember right, plus damages for the second tree. He had a professional tree person look after it so all the damage healed properly, which alone cost nearly $1,000. But these idiots actually thought the trial would be unfair and tried to fight it, which probably cost them an additional $10,000 to $15,000 in lawyer and court costs. All in all, this whole trial must have cost them over $120,000. Then he went to civil court and sued them for emotional damage. He told them how much these trees meant to him since his great-grandparents had planted them with seeds from the home country. He really laid it on as thick as he could. Plus, he felt threatened by the HOA and can hardly sleep because he always fears that they're trying to get into his house. The court actually bought it and gave him $500,000 plus the cost for a state-of-the-art alarm system so that he can feel safe again in his own home. So put all together, he cost the HOA nearly $750,000. They had to file for bankruptcy and get a person to check the books so my friend would get his money. And the best part is saved for last here. The mediator found out that these 3 guys had been defrauded defrauding the HOA for well over 10 years and were giving out as many fines as they possibly could so that they could use it to bolster their income. All three had to sell their houses so they could pay out my friend. Now, he is, for most people, one of their favorite people living there, and he constantly gets invited over for grilling and whatnot. You see, most people never wanted the HOA in the first place, but the board members practically forced them to sign the contracts, claiming that it would not be optional, and if they did not sign before moving in, it would be a $500 fine. Only 6 of the over 50 members actually wanted this HOA, and people think this is because they got a part of the action as a reward for spying out their neighbors to find violations. So, was this going too far, or was it justified? Was he the jerk? This was pretty crazy, and in most of these HOA scams, the HOA rarely ever ends up getting caught, and even if they do, they generally don't get this type of extreme punishment where they're sued and fined from every direction. And the fact that they uncovered they've been doing this fraud for over 10 years is kind of crazy. It sounds like a situation where they made some extra money, didn't get caught, decided to do a little bit more, didn't get caught, decided to do a little bit more, again and again and again for 10 years, to the point where their greed just got out of control, and now that's their new normal. If you've ever been in a situation like this, feel free to submit your stories via the link in the description, but if not, how would you handle this? Let me know down below. A Karen, my crazy aunt, tries to force feed my uncle his diet so he eats exactly what she tells him to, when she tells him to. But instead, the first moment he gets, he shoves an entire bread roll into his mouth, and she goes ballistic. Then she tries to enforce her food rules on the rest of the family, and that's when things go horribly wrong, in the most funny way possible. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. This happened almost 40 years ago. My immediate family was, for the most part, perfectly normal and boring. We were not prone to outbursts and tantrums. It was very calm and quiet, everyone got along, and we were pretty happy with our boredom. I tell you that so you understand that I had absolutely no experience at all with people prone to screaming fits. You should also know that I suffer from a case of terminal morbid curiosity. I also don't give a care, never did, never saw the fun in it. This happened when we were visiting for great auntie's funeral. I was 12 years old. My crazy aunt insisted that we all go out to dinner at her favorite Italian restaurants. It was just the best. She said so, and she was never wrong. The gimmick here was a little flag of Italy on the table. When you wanted more dinner rolls, you raised the flag. This is important. Flag up, you get rolls. Flag down, no rolls. Remember that. The 6 of us are seated. They take our drink order and bring the bread basket. The cast has a new member. My poor, long-suffering uncle, who will one day be made a saint for being married to my crazy aunt for over 20 years. Some people said that he was an enabler. He wasn't. He was a victim as well. He couldn't leave her without leaving Emily. It started with the drink order. My crazy aunt said,
We'll have 5 sweet teas.
My dad said, I'll have a Coke. My mom said, I'll have a Coke. I said, tea, no sugar. This is a mortal sin in the South.
Oh, don't be silly. You can't have sweet tea without sugar.
I don't like sugar.
That's stupid. Bring her sweet tea now.
The waitress, while winking at me, said, yes, ma'am. My poor uncle said, I think I'd like a Coke as well. And Emily said, I'd like a Coke.
We drink Pepsi, not Coke. We are having sweet tea.
The waitress brought us our requested drinks. My crazy aunt was growing agitated. My crazy aunt likes to control everything and everyone, so she told us what to order for dinner. I'm not going to get into an ethical debate here, but I refused to eat veal. She demanded we all have the veal. I refused. I knew this would set her off, but oh well, I'm not eating veal. My parents, after I had explained to them years earlier why I would not eat veal, refused to eat it as well. Did I mention I get my I don't give a care quality from my parents? Well, they didn't give a care either. They were perfectly capable of ordering whatever they wanted, so they did. I had lasagna, it was good. My mother's was better. Once we ordered what we wanted, it emboldened my poor uncle, and he stepped out of line and ordered something else as well. My crazy aunt was not having it.
You are getting the veal.
No, I feel like something else tonight, my poor uncle told her, and she responded by saying,
the veal is the best.
I still want something else.
You won't like it.
I'm sure I will.
You don't know what you're talking about.
But I know what I like.
Well, you can't have it. Oh, yes, I can. I said no. Well, I'm ordering it. You can always just get the veal. That's because it's your favorite and you make me. I don't even like Italian food. Yes, you do. It's your favorite. I want the lasagna. Damn it, poor uncle. Order what I tell you to order. No, lasagna.
At this point, Emily jumps in and says, I'll have the lasagna too.
You can't have that. You're allergic.
No, I'm not.
I'm your mother. I know what you can and you cannot eat. Bring her the veal.
My aunt told the waitress. The whole time this is going on, I'm looking from one to another like watching a tennis match, back and forth, with the pitch of her voice getting more and more shrill with each sentence. I was fairly certain that when we left, bats would have been summoned. I'm just watching them and eating a dinner roll. The food arrives and everyone got what they wanted, even Emily, much to the fury of my crazy aunt. But then it happens. My poor uncle raises the flag. My crazy aunt puts it back down. My poor uncle puts it back up. Crazy aunt takes it back down. Up and down, up and down, down and up, down and up. I see the bread guy hovering at the end of the table, waiting. The flag goes up and he rushes in to drop off the new basket before it can go back down. My crazy aunt grabs the basket and throws it at the kid that delivered it. To save time of explaining everything, basically every time my crazy aunt speaks, the flag goes down. The rest of the time, it goes back up.
You don't need any more bread. But I want more. I said no. I'm an adult and I can have more bread if I wanna. No, you can't. Why? Just tell me why I can't have more bread. Because I said so. You aren't listening to me. I'm hungry and I very much want some more bread. Well, you wouldn't be if you had ordered the veal. Yes, I would. I always am, but you never let me have more bread. Tonight I get more.
I chime in and say, I want some more bread too.
No, you've had enough.
No, really, I think I want more.
Well, you are wrong.
You seem upset.
That's because you people aren't listening to me.
Yes, we are. We just don't care. We want more bread. My dad said to me while trying not to laugh at how absurd this is, you aren't helping. And I told him, I think you want more bread too. At this point, the whole place is watching our table and the battle over the flag. I'm fairly sure there were people taking bets on who would win. In the middle of the confusion, a nice lady sitting at another table nearest Emily tapped her and slipped the fresh bread basket to her. Emily took a roll and slipped it to me. I took one and slipped it to my father. Then it went to my mother, who, after taking a roll for herself, slipped one onto my poor uncle's plate. My crazy aunt saw it and grabbed for it. My poor uncle was faster. He shoved the whole thing into his mouth at once. It was a big roll. The waitress approached the table to see if we needed anything. Zans were unfortunately not on the menu, and my crazy aunt demanded that she bring the check. But I said, I want dessert, chocolate cake.
That sounds great. I'll have some.
Emily said, me too. My dad said, I'll have an apple pie. My mom said, I'll have a cheesecake. Bring cheesecake for the crazy aunt. She loves cheesecake.
No, we are not having dessert. We are getting the check and we are leaving now.
My dad said, no, we aren't.
Well, I'm leaving. You can all walk home.
My dad responded by saying, I drove. It's our car.
I know. Give me the keys.
Nope.
You have to give me the keys. I live here. You are just visiting.
Yes, I'm just visiting with my family in our car.
It's my state.
I don't care. It's my car and you can't have it. You're a terrible driver anyway.
No, I am not.
You drive the wrong way on the freeway.
I do not. It's the other cars going the wrong way.
You also get lost in your own neighborhood.
Not always.
You are not driving my car.
Yes, I am.
No, you aren't. That, ladies and gentlemen, continued while we ate desserts, paid the check my father was buying as we were walking to the car, and for the entire trip back to their house, my father drove. We dropped them off and went back to our hotel room. My dad said, has your sister always been this crazy? My mom told him, no, it started when she was about 3. What happened? She started speaking in complete sentences. Ah, I see. Even though this story took place a long long time ago, what do you think we should have done? This was a hilarious story that really is a story about control. The aunt in the situation just wants control more than anything else, and she's probably never really been challenged up to this point in her life. The guy that she's married to, they're even referring to as poor uncle to paint the picture that he doesn't stand up for himself, he doesn't stand up to her, none of it, he just takes whatever he's given. Until now. He decided he wanted that bread roll, and he got that bread roll by shoving it into his mouth all at once. I really don't know how you can handle being with somebody like that for so long. You just never get to eat what you want when you want to eat ever. There's actually a show called The Sandman that has a non-main character that reminds me of this. This non-main character guy dates this CEO woman who also does the exact same thing. He wants a burger, she forces him to have a salad. He wants to do something and she tells him to do something else. But that guy as well as the uncle in this story both have their breaking points. And once that dam has been broken, it all floods out. The uncle goes straight to having some chocolate cake on top of all the other bread and everything he wanted. So what makes a person want to be controlling in this way for so long about something seemingly so unimportant to so many people? Let me know what your theory is on that and what you would do if you were in this situation down below. Our resort put out a beautiful breakfast buffet every morning. Very nice, self-serve. It wasn't your typical little mid-range buffet. This was high-end stuff. Saying what it was would make the location identifiable, so sorry, can't tell. The buffet has two hostesses that work at keeping everything stocked, fresh, and the coffee urns full. We had weddings here almost every weekend, so we are very used to dealing with them. One of the issues we dealt with was when wedding parties registered a few guests, and those registered guests assumed the free buffet should accommodate the entire wedding party or others. Usually, we were able to inform them that the buffet is only for registered guests, but they could pay an additional $5 per person if others would like to join them. This was a hell of a deal for what we put out there, and most were perfectly willing to pay the additional charge. Then there was this party. First, it was an employee who booked the wedding venue, so it's already discounted for a wedding that is not hers, but a cousin's. The employee tried to book 3 rooms using an employee discount on all 3 and was a bit miffed that it would only apply to 1 room, and only if she was in residence. She didn't want to be in residence. She lived in the community and was booking these accommodations for out-of-town family members, denied using employee discounts. So, said employee informs the guests that the free buffet is for everyone, not just registered guests, but everyone. The first day that they are there, of a 3-day stay, in comes 30 people from the family. This group has a huge family, and the wedding will be over 300 people. So, seeing the large group who are already helping themselves to the food, we locate which are the registered guests, inform them of the additional fee, and they refuse to pay. Nope, free is free. Sorry y'all, not happening. Front desk has to come in and address the free feeding frenzy, which now includes members of this party taking entire platters and walking off with them. They are taking out plastic bags. They came prepared to do this and dumping bowls of fresh fruits and more into them and bolting. In under 10 minutes, they completely destroyed and emptied the entire buffet. They walked off with full crystal jugs of juice and milk and even picked up the entire coffee urn, sugars, and everything. The hostesses and front desk struggle to get the buffet replenished and calls are being placed to the wedding coordinator and general manager. Other guests are waiting for their breakfast to be available and are quite kind and patient. The general manager comes in and is furious beyond belief when shown pictures and videos of what happened. He calls the employee to come in right now and address it. She does and goes into a rant about how it should be free for all, that we wouldn't give her discounted rooms, etc. He tells her to bring the 6 registered guests in to talk. She refuses, so the general manager places a call to each guest, who now all claim not to speak English and just scream in their language. Except, surprise, the general manager speaks the same language. It's 3 hours till wedding time. General manager informs the 6 registered guests that they are free to stay for the day and the wedding, but they will not be extended to the 2nd or 3rd night. Wow, the screaming. But they are all coming down to the front desk to complain. So we get a lobby full of now over 50, more family has arrived, people, all screaming in a non-English language about how they are being discriminated against, mistreated, they will have everyone fired, etc. Just wow, unreal. Front and center our employee, soon to be an ex-employee in about 5 minutes. So somehow this all winds down. General manager is having a heart attack and a panic attack and is barely containing his fury. He pulls up the rooms and attaches as many fees as he can possibly get away with, including the extra charges for the buffet, damages, etc. Wedding happens, sloshing happens, happens, and all day and evening we are subjected to verbal abuse from wedding party and guests. The next day comes, and now the people involved are aware that they are being kicked out, no longer welcome. General manager allows them to stay for the wedding day only, no longer. Wow, again, just imagine how that went down. Then multiply it. Bottom line, each registered guest ended up with over $1,700 in room charges. The employee was fired. The registered guests get on every DNR, do not rent in the county. Good luck getting family visits in the future, ex-employee. General manager and front desk spent all week sharing this story with everyone as far as they could. But right before the said guests departed, eventually they left a parting gift. One last trip through the buffet. They wiped it out completely. We ended up giving gift vouchers to all guests who showed up for breakfast to other restaurants in the area. The staff was dispatched to several stores, some 60 miles away, to restock for the Sunday breakfast, which would have a full house, minus the wedding party. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Of course, they fought all the additional charges, but the videos of the condition they left the rooms in, with the drinks and oh boy, smoking in the non-smoking rooms and the food smeared everywhere, really helped out. Thank goodness for video, which also captured the first and second attacks on the buffet. There were also multiple people who were not registered who apparently stayed in the rooms by what was left behind and observed. What a mess. Rooms were out of service for 2 days. What should we have done? It's pretty surprising that this was all basically done by an employee. It seems unlikely that this specific wedding party would go to this specific place if it wasn't for the employee that worked there, letting them know about it and probably telling them about the employee discounts. So it was kind of like an inside job. I mean, there's a reason why everybody came prepared. They didn't just casually go up to the buffet. They basically bum rushed it, took everything they can, and even had bags to put the food in to take elsewhere. And the drinks and the crystal pitchers, everything. Maybe the employee who was using the employee discount here saw that other people were doing this and got away with it and thought, why shouldn't I be able to get away with this with my group of people? This is the kind of thing that makes it so that places don't have available food, because they probably do a cost-benefit analysis and figure, okay, this many people will book here because of this food, but if we get one person that takes advantage of it, it's going to cost us this much money, so let's not do it. And then you end up in a situation where there is no breakfast or available food at all. So let me know what you would have done in this situation down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My son's school wants his Facebook password and email. Also wants us to hand over any phone or computer that he's had access to in the last year. My son is 15 years old. Today I received a phone call from the school telling me that they are doing an investigation into a series of very serious incidents that happened last year, and they would like to have the password from my son's Facebook account, also asking me to disable two-step verification if his account has it. They also said it would be really a great help if I hand over any phones, tablets, or computers that my son has had access to in the last year or so, removing any passcode or login restriction. I was shocked when I heard this. I asked about the incident, and I was told that they can't tell me since it doesn't directly concern my son, that they only seek this to see if there's been any mention of it in the communications that my son has had with his friends, which might help them uncover some information. I declined. I told them that I'm happy to talk to them about the incident in person if it concerns my son, but other than that, this is very unreasonable and really none of our business. I was told something along the lines of, I strongly recommend you to help us. This is a very serious issue for a few other students, and to be honest with you, refusal will have some consequences. I'm mostly talking about your son's future at the school in the coming school year, but also potentially legal. I really hope you cooperate for all of our sake. I told her to send us what they want in writing. She said she hopes we're not trying to make this difficult as, quote, lives are on the line here. I insisted that I wanted it for my records. She said they might do that. So my question is, what is this? They can't be serious about this. My instinct is to get a lawyer if we receive anything in writing, but really what I'm wondering is about how far can they go into this so-called investigation? Let's say when school starts, my son takes a phone or iPad to school. Can they confiscate it and look through it? Can they force him to reveal the passcode to it or force him to use his fingerprint to unlock it? How do I make sure they can't just invade our privacy like that? Jumping into the future, there is an update. I went to the school and asked what was going on. I did that to both confirm that the call was genuine and to see why they wanted to violate my son and our family's privacy on such a massive scale. First, the call was genuine and it wasn't a scam. Second, the principal explained the situation to me. It had to do with another student who attempted self-checkout, aka she tried to punch her own ticket because of bullying during the summer. Thank goodness she is now alright and has since moved to another school, but this was part of the school's investigation investigation to figure out how it happened. When I asked how was it any of my son's business, they said they've seen them hang out together, and while they don't think my son was involved in the bullying itself, they'd like to read his conversations with her because she may have confided in him about the students involved in bullying. I asked why this information wasn't obtained from the parents of the students. The answer was that they weren't willing to work with the school about it, and she had left, so they had no power over them. Strange use of words in this situation. I told them to leave my son out of this witch hunt, and the way they're speaking to us, they sound like they're trying to bully us into helping their anti-bullying investigation, which is troubling and absurd. I told them that if they ever approach my son or try to take his phone or anything by force or threats, I am going to make a big deal out of this, talk to the superintendent and hire a lawyer. Up till this day, they haven't said or done a thing. I talked to my son about the girl and what happened to her. He said he knew her and they had some mutual friends, but they weren't exactly friends, and he wasn't aware of her attempt. He only knew that she had left the school. He showed me their conversations and there wasn't much there except talking about movies and TV shows. In short, the school backed off after I made sure they understood that I won't take any harassment or violation of our privacy lightly. So, was I the jerk for how I handled this? When the school said that there were lives on the line, it made it sound like there was still somebody currently in that moment in danger. But when the OP actually goes to the school, they basically explain it as somebody was in danger, this girl, but now she's okay and she's left. People were pointing out that if lives are really on the line, they should call the police. But in this case, another possibility that seems likely is that the school is trying to absolve themselves of any guilt or wrongdoing. And if they could get some parent to give over their kid's account, then maybe they'll find somebody to point the finger at and they won't be in any trouble for anything on their part. If it was because they thought whoever these bullies were going to bully somebody else and they saw signs of that already, I think they probably would have said that, but that didn't come up at all. And I think most parents probably wouldn't give over their kids' social media accounts, not because they would necessarily incriminate themselves, but because that's a violation of privacy, just as the OP said here. So what would you do in a situation like this? Do you think your parents would give access to your social media accounts over to the school? Let me know your thoughts down below on jerk or not a jerk and why. A crazy lady in a grocery store says that she really likes my tote bag and then expects me to give it to her. When I tell her no, she stalks me throughout the store, following me aisle by aisle, staring at me, waiting for me to give her my tote bag. When I leave the store, she gets into her car and tries to follow me home. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. So this happened a couple of days ago, and the more I think about it, the more disturbed I get. For some backstory, I am a huge musical theater nerd, and a few years ago I got to see the Phantom of the Opera in Seattle. And as a souvenir, I bought a tote bag with the play's logo printed all over it that I am still very fond of. Now, the show is playing in the theater in my area, and there's been a lot of local buzz about it. I went to see it this weekend and decided to carry my Phantom tote for a while since my love of the show has been bolstered, and the bag is a great conversation starter for the other theater nerds I may meet in public who recognize the show that my bag references. Now, let's set the stage. A couple days ago, I went to the grocery store near my apartment to stock up on some pretty standard foodstuffs. When I walked in, I saw a cashier that I'm friendly with working at the self-checkout kiosk, so I stopped to talk to him for a few minutes. My bag was hanging over my shoulder within clear view of the doors. After a couple of minutes into my chat, I felt a tap on my shoulder, so I turned around to address whoever was trying to get my attention and found a relatively normal looking woman. Average size, normal clothing, normal hairstyle, nothing to indicate that this woman was a Karen type in any way.
Is that the Phantom of the Opera on your bag?
Me being happy to chat about one of my favorite musicals. Yeah, do you like the show?
It's fine. I took my daughter last weekend to see it at the local theater. She loves musicals.
Me too. I thought it was a really great show. The cast did a really great job, and she cut me off to say,
"Did you buy that bag there? I didn't see that bag at any of the booths."
"Actually, I got this in Seattle. I saw the show a few years ago."
Oh, because there weren't any souvenirs of this show my daughter liked. She would love that bag.
Then she looked at me expectantly. Then as I start to realize what she wants, I say, I'm sorry your daughter didn't find any keepsakes that she wanted.
She was so disappointed. She didn't have anything to remember the show by. She would love your bag. Love it.
Well, I know. I love this bag. I hope next time your daughter sees a show, she finds a souvenir she likes. I'm pretty nervous to this point because I'm very non-confrontational, and I've read plenty to know entitled parents like causing scenes. I grip my bag very tightly, trying to hold it against my body with my elbow and with both hands tightly on the straps. I tell her, "I've got to go do my shopping now, excuse me." To my pleasant surprise, she didn't say anything else, so I really thought I'd gotten away without any crazy happening. I grabbed a basket and went to the cereal aisle. As I'm putting Cheerios into my basket, the entitled mother also enters the aisle. She doesn't have a cart or a basket, and she doesn't try to approach me again. Instead, she just stares at me. I decide to try and ignore her and go about my business as usual, grabbing the things on my shopping list. Every aisle I go to, she follows me into. Every single one. Just staring at me. I'm certain she was waiting for me to let my guard down. I go through the self-checkout and she hangs by the discount bread rack nearby, still watching. Knowing she's probably not going to give this up when I leave the store, I flag down my acquaintance working the self-checkout kiosk and tell him I'm pretty sure that the entitled mother is going to follow me to my car. He's wary of her and walks me and my purchases out to the parking lot and doesn't leave until my bags are loaded and I'm in my car with my doors locked. I was still keeping an eye on the entitled mother, and sure enough, she left the store when I did, watching me as I got to my car. I saw her get into her own car, still watching me. My acquaintance who walked me out went back to the store and I was left alone in my vehicle, caught in an awkward staring match with the entitled mother also in her car. She didn't even try to hide the fact that she was watching me. It dawned on me that the entitled mother was likely to follow me home, so instead of taking my usual exit that would take me back to my apartment, I drove over to the exit that turned off onto the more major street. The entitled mother followed me like I expected. I sat there for a couple of minutes at least, waiting. See, there's an intersection at the corner of the grocery store with really long light times, so cars end up lining up a fair amount. I waited until the last possible second until that light turned green and unleashed a wave of cars turning right just before they hit, leaving the entitled mother stranded to wait for them to pass if she wanted to follow me. I drove up the street and got onto the highway, then took the exit for the next neighborhood over and took the back way to my apartment. My car is pretty noticeable. It's bright orange, and I didn't want to take any chances that the entitled mother may recognize my car by going back the way I came. It seems that I successfully ditched her because no one has come banging on my door demanding I give them my phantom tote. Needless to say, I will be leaving that bag at home from now on. An update from the future. For anyone who still cares about this incident, I have news. The entitled mother has been banned from the grocery store. I haven't seen her since, but my acquaintance who works there saw me come in this morning and asked me if I remembered the crazy lady who wanted my bag. It turns out she's been in a few times since she followed me home, but didn't pull anything until last week when she attacked a girl trying to steal her My Neighbor Totoro themed jacket, again claiming her daughter would love it. Police were called. I have no clue if that poor girl is pressing charges, but I hope she is. Either way, the crazy entitled mother is no longer allowed in the store, and us nerds can once again shop there with our nerd merchandise in peace. So in this situation, what would you have done? This is actually kind of a horrifying situation. The mother followed her out of the store, got in the car, and tried to basically chase her car all the way until she went back home to do what? To bang on her door and ask for the tote like the OP suggests here? Or something much more insidious than that? We'll never really know because luckily the OP was able to lose her on the way back home. But that is a pretty serious thing. Somebody trying to follow you home to find out where you live is obviously something to worry about. Somebody being awkward or staring at you in a store is one thing, but she took it to the next level. I wouldn't be surprised if this mother wasn't a mother at all, if she didn't even have a kid and she just becomes fixated on certain things and has this automatic go-to excuse of, my daughter would love it, as a way to try and justify her bizarre behavior. In the update, she attacked the girl in the grocery store because she wanted her Totoro jacket. This lady has some serious issues and it sounds like she can actually be pretty dangerous. So if this happened to you or a loved one, let me know how you would respond down below. Am I the jerk for giving my stepson a 20-minute time limit to return my car before I phone the police? I am a 34-year-old female doctor, and part of my job entails being on call for 1 to 3 nights a week, twice a month. My fiance Dale, who's 30, has been saving with my stepson's mom to buy him a car for Christmas. My stepson Rex is 16, and he has a license already, but always has to borrow his mom's station wagon or his dad's beat-up pickup truck. His mom's car is lame and embarrassing, and his dad's car can only hold 1 passenger, not practical for a teen. On to the main conflict. Rex texted me yesterday around 12 if he could borrow my car after school. His friends wanted to go to the mall, but the bus route is too long. Could they borrow my car? I texted back a, sorry, but no, I'm on call again. Can you ask your mom? He says no. I told him, sorry, but my answer is still no. I'm sure you will find a solution. Ask your friends friends and you can all figure it out. If you see where this is going, you are less shocked than I am. I was up in my home office, the room where I keep my Switch, my sewing machine, and my laptop, so not an official office, when I heard Rex and his friends downstairs after school. I was going to see if they needed anything, but they left after a few minutes. An hour later, I went to the kitchen, cleaning up the empty bottles and wrappers from their snacks. I saw the spot where I left my keys empty. I began to panic. First, I bolted to the door. My car was gone. Immediately, I dialed my stepson. He picks up and it's obvious he's in a mall store that plays loud music. I told him to get his butt home now. He laughed and said that I am not his mom. He'll be home whenever he pleases. I am not proud, but I told him that he has 20 minutes to get home or I will call the police and report my car stolen. Rex panics and said that he couldn't find all his friends and drive home in 20 minutes. I told him tough crap. 10 minutes later, I get a text that he is in the mall parking lot and will be home soon. I phoned Rex's mother and informed her of his stunt. She was madder than me when I told her that I was on call. She apologized and promised to talk with Rex and Dale ASAP. Rex came in, threw my keys, and locked himself in his room. Dale finally came home around 8 and said that he had been on the phone with his ex. He demanded to know why I punished his son. I put my foot down and I explained, I am on call. That means I need my car. Rex stole my car. Dale disagrees. His ex agrees with me and decided she will not be buying Rex a car anytime soon due to his entitlement. Dale thinks that I am making a big deal out of nothing. I didn't end up going into work, so why did I have to threaten Rex? I have only gone in twice this year while on call. Just because nothing happens doesn't mean that I am always clear. Rex is now grounded. My fiance barely speaks to me, asks me when I'm going in today, and if I will apologize. I am not budging, and I am still pissed that he doesn't get it. For some additional information, Dale is 30 years old, not 29, but yes, he was 14 years old when Rex was born. Don't get hung up on this. This isn't about teen parents. Rex's mom was 15 when they had him and is the best mom if you ask me. She is who introduced me to Dale. I am going to have a very frank discussion with Dale tonight. Rex is with his mom, so he won't be in the middle or get involved. The kid still wouldn't look at me and called me a B who won't let him get his own car now. More of the story is explained via responses to comments. So here are a few of the OP's responses. You think I could have ruined my stepson's life? I could have lost my job because of his selfish actions. If I am on call and don't respond, someone might die. Rex's self-centered attitude could have caused way more harm than he realizes. He thinks that I have it easy, sitting around waiting for work to call me in. It is not easy. I am constantly glued to my phone to make sure that I don't miss a call. I cannot relax on these days. I am not off or on vacation. I have to be ready to drop everything, change into my scrubs, and be out of the house within minutes. So when I noticed my car was missing, I could do absolutely nothing. In my head, I was jobless with an oncoming lawsuit. You think that this was just a teenage rebellious stunt? It was Rex being an entitled little jerk. And you defend his actions, probably because you are his age and don't understand real life experience. So your comments are nothing but useless garbage to me. Go bother someone else. Jumping into the future, there is an update. So apparently, Dale reads through this subreddit on his work breaks. He texted me a link to my post during his dinner break. A short time later, I received a call from Rex's mom, who said that Dale called her and ranted about how I made him look bad online. She told him that she didn't give a care because he did not react the way that a good parent should. Dale was so furious that he told her that he would be calling his mother to see if someone actually cared about his feelings. Dale's mother handed his butt back to him good and reiterated to Dale that he was not an active part of his son's life until he was 6, so he has no leg to stand on. Dale tried to complain about how everyone was being unfair to him. She shut him up and told him that his son did something wrong, and this is not about punishing him for being a bad father. Dale returned home a little while ago, about an hour earlier than he usually does. He looked defeated, but he was still short with me. He said that he was disappointed that I posted, and now everyone who knows will think he's a joke and a bad father. I didn't think this conversation would end up with my ending the engagement and the relationship, but it did. The house is all in my name, so Dale is packing up his stuff and crawling back to his mom's house. The wedding date wasn't set, so no money or time lost there. Dale said so many things that I don't even want to write down. This is not the man who I have known for 4 years, and I am honestly shocked at how selfish he is. He said my doctor money would have to buy Rex a car to make up for all of the hard feelings. I am astonished at how delusional he is. I am done with this account and I will not be returning. And one one last thing to add. The fact that he wasn't in Rex's life until age 6 was a huge red flag to me. He never mentioned it to me and refused to admit that it was a big deal during the argument we had when he came home. So now that you know everything, was I the jerk for giving my stepson a 20-minute time limit to return my car before I phoned the police? Based on that last comment that Dale made about her using her doctor money to buy him a car to make up for all the hard feelings, really makes it seem like deep down Dale resents her for being a doctor and having money that isn't being spent on him or Rex. How is there any interpretation that what Rex did was okay in Dale's mind? If they were going the route that Dale was saying and not punishing him and not saying anything to him, then Rex would think it was okay to just steal somebody's car. And in this case, it was particularly serious because it wasn't just anyone's car, it was a doctor who was on call. What if somebody actually did die? What if he decided to go an hour away? They called her to come in to save somebody's life. She said, okay, I'll be there, went out to the garage and found that there was no car, and then the person died. The severity of the situation isn't lessened because she didn't happen to be called that day. And if they did think that it wasn't that serious because she wasn't called that day, and then Rex thought it was okay to just take the car whenever he wanted, eventually there would be a day that would come that she would be called in and the car wouldn't be there. So either way, you're reinforcing terrible behavior that does have real life consequences to other people. That aspect of this story makes me think of those thought experiments where you give somebody a box and in that box is a red button, and every time you push that button you get $1,000, but every time you push that button somebody that you don't know will die somewhere. So the question is, how many times do you push that button? 0 times or enough times to get a few $1,000,000? I think the reason why it didn't resonate with Rex as much is because the people that could potentially be in a life-threatening situation, they're out of sight, out of mind for him, so they don't really mean anything to him in that moment. But let me know how you see this whole situation down below. What would you do, and jerk or not a jerk, and why? I walked in on my husband doing the deed with his partner, and I'm happy I did. So about a year ago, Matthew, my husband who's 39, started saying that he wanted us to open up our marriage. His reasoning was that he was no longer attracted to me because I'm too loosey-goosey. He didn't want us to get a divorce because he still loved me. He insisted that we continue being a happy couple that did not act in the bedroom with one another. We would have our needs met by someone who we would/could consider to be our other partner. I was initially hurt by this because when he explained his reasoning, he didn't miss a beat when insulting me. I was no longer attractive to him because I aged. I'm currently 34 years old. I agreed to open the marriage because I love him and I didn't want to lose him. A brief set of the rules we agreed on once we found a partner. We would have to introduce our partners to each other. My husband introduces his partner to me and vice versa. We can do the deed with other people, but in order for it to be considered okay, we'll have to tell each other about it. If we get into that sort of relationship with someone, we must get tested regularly. We don't do the deed with our partner in our home. We can build emotional relationships with someone, but can't be taken as far as love. We show our partners the rules and explain our boundaries. We do not call our partners pet names. My husband and I must come home to each other every night, sleep in the same bed, wake up together. Typical marriage, just without the friskiness. We have more rules, but I just wanted to state the main ones. A couple weeks after Matthew insisted we open our marriage, he brought home his partner, Jamie. Jamie is so pretty, like an angel. A fresh-faced, beautiful boy with the uttermost perfect smile, the literal definition of youth. I had never been more intimidated in my life. The introduction was so embarrassing. I had no idea what to say and I just wanted to cry. I literally witnessed my husband's type change in front of my eyes. Jamie and I are complete opposites, physically and personality-wise. Now, on to the story. Yesterday I came home on my lunch break to take a quick nap before returning to work and came home to find my husband and Jamie doing the deed. I was shocked and I didn't really even know what to do, so I just left and went back to work. I honestly wasn't even tired anymore. As I was walking into work, I saw that I was being bombarded with texts and calls from them both, so I just turned my phone off. I got out of work around 9 p.m., but I didn't want to go home. I went to a movie and just drove around after. I fell asleep on the side of the road and returned home at 8 a.m. this morning to get ready for work. When I walked in, I saw Matthew and Jamie at the table. Jamie looked sad while Matthew looked pissed. I told them good morning and went and got ready for work. Matthew followed me yelling, saying that what I did was wrong, and my reaction was completely uncalled for. He told me that I was being over dramatic and had him up all night worried because I wanted to act like a child. I don't know what came over me, but I stopped him mid-sentence and asked for a divorce. You don't love me anymore, and I don't want to love you. I'm so lonely and I have never had anyone nitpick my appearance more than you. If you aren't attracted to me, then marry someone you are attracted to. I want a divorce. He looked shocked and told me that I didn't know what I was saying and that I was just tired. When he tried walking me to the bed, I got really mad. I smacked his hand away and left again. This was a breakthrough for me. I usually let people walk all over me, but I didn't let him do it again today. I didn't want the open marriage, and I don't want someone who puts me second. Was I the jerk? As a whole, everything here just sounds so sad. The OP has really been putting up with something that they didn't want to deal with this entire time, but luckily they were able to stand up for themselves, even if it took a really long time to do so, and say what they did or did not want. It kind of sounds like something broke inside the OP when this all happened, because it was almost automatic, the response of, I want a divorce, you don't love me anymore, and I don't want to love you. The husband here knew what their rules were, and then he decided to break them and then try to blame it on the OP, and then say that the OP was acting like a child and over dramatic and other names. So let me know how you would handle a situation like this down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. A Karen thinks that I corrupted her son and made him become trans. Then she expects me to financially compensate her because of this, due to me corrupting her child to become trans. She then tries to steal my ID and run off with it. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. Obligatory English is not my first language, and this story takes place in Mexico City. A bit of backstory to the events. I am a transgender man. I had my top surgery a little over a year ago, yay. However, for personal and medical reasons, I decided not to go through HRT, hormone replacement therapy. Because of that, and the fact that my height is around 1.52 meters, which is 4'9", I am stuck as being perceived as a teen/young adult, even though I'm 35 years old. So now on to the story. I was hanging out at my favorite coffee shop. I always stay on the smoking area as I am, a smoker. Anyways, our laws over here state that to be able to stay in the smoking area, you need to be at least the age to smoke, which is 18. Keep in mind though, this law is not as harsh and as strict in other places like the United States. A bit relevant also, I have been a regular at this coffee place for at least 10 years. I know most of the waiters by name. Karen enters with a kid around the age of 5 and invades 2 tables, which is a bit rude since the smoke area only has 6 tables, but whatever. One for her and the other for her son, who proceeds to take out some crayons and a coloring book. I ignore all this as I am lost in the book that I'm reading. At this point, I do something as crazy as light a smoke in the smoking area, and a few seconds later, I hear the dreaded sound of Karen clearing her throat. I ignore her, and the next exchange occurs.
Hey, young man, listen to me.
Me being annoyed that my reading was interrupted. Yeah?
Don't you think it's a bit rude that you are blowing smoke all over my son?
I point to the big sign on the wall that says smoking area, 18 and over only.
Do you even know how to talk? Are you an R-word? Answer me. You are way too young to be smoking anyways.
Whatever, lady. I proceed to take my headphones out of my backpack and plug them in. Karen keeps speaking, but by the miracle of technology, I can't make out a word she says. So I figured that was all. A few minutes later, I noticed some commotion around me and again hear the sound of dear Karen's banshee howls. I look up and see Karen arguing with one of the waiters and pointing at me. So of course, I take off my headphones to hear what that was all about.
You have to do something. He's clearly underage and blowing smoke all over my son. Don't think for a second that I won't call the police on this.
The waiter says, ma'am, as I already told you, I don't need to ask that young man's ID as he has been coming here for years.
I don't care. I know the law and I know my rights. He needs to show his ID to stay in the smoking area.
Kind of right, I will concede. But at this point I lose interest and plug myself back into my music. The waiter, after a few futile minutes of arguing with Karen, taps on my shoulder and says, hey man, I'm really sorry. Can you just pull out your ID so this lady can move on? I take my ID out from my back pocket, which is still with my dead name, as even though changing your birth certificate is legal and relatively cheap in Mexico City, I would have to spend around $1,000 US to get all my paperwork, education degrees, passport, driver's license, you get my drill, changed, and I spend most of my savings on my surgery. So the waiter tells her, okay ma'am, you can see here that he has shown me a valid form of identification. Now you have your kid out of here and...
Let me see that!
She snatches my ID from the waiter's hand.
This is clearly fake! freak! That's a woman's name! How dare you impersonate a woman!
The waiter said, "Ma'am, the ID is real and you need to give it back to him right now."
No, I am calling the police right now so they can confiscate this and question him about why he is carrying a fake ID. That is a felony.
Then she turned to me and said,
Now you have a lot to explain, young man. If only you could have been polite and not smoke all over my son.
me finally losing my patience, "Lady, I do not owe you an explanation, but for the sake of ending this and me going back to my book, I am a transgender man. I was born a woman, but I am not one, and my ID still has yet to reflect my gender identity. All settled? Good. Now give me back my ID." Karen, while her face went from normal to red in less than 3 seconds, visibly disturbed, said,
You are a freak. How dare you stand so close to my child? You are going to corrupt him.
now addressing the waiter,
Transgender! How dare you allow transgender freaks in here?
the kid said,
Mommy, what does transgender mean?
me, after knowing that my afternoon is already spoiled and thinking, what the heck, just let the world burn right now. I say, I am transgender. That means I was born like a girl, but inside, I always knew I am a boy. So I changed my name and how I look, and I am very happy right now. Karen said this, overlapping at the same time while I was speaking to her son, and said,
Don't talk to my child! Don't even dare! Mommy, that means I can be a girl?
now I don't think the kid is trans or anything. This is actually a pretty common question when explaining to little kids about trans people. For Karen, it took a few seconds to get out of the shock of it all, and she screamed.
How dare you! You are evil and you have just corrupted my son! I demand compensation! My child is ruined!
Now, as you can imagine, by then we had a pretty small crowd watching over, which eventually got the manager's attention. The manager said, "What's going on here? Ma'am, I need to ask you to lower your voice and moderate your language." She used a few choice cuss words and offensive slang to refer to me, but I won't even dignify to reproduce them.
I will talk as loud as I want. It is outrageous what happens here. Are you in charge?
Yes, ma'am, I'm the manager of this coffee place, and if you don't lower your voice, I will have to ask you to leave. Now, can you explain to me why you are yelling at my staff and my customers?
I am a member of the Family League.
The Family League in Mexico is a right-wing association that fights against LGBT plus rights in general, abortion, single moms, and everything that is not your traditional mommy, daddy, and kids family.
I will have this place shut down in a heartbeat if I don't get compensation right now.
The manager, being a bit sassy at this point, says, "And what exactly should we compensate you for?"
That freak made my boy transgender. You allow a predator to be here and corrupt young minds.
And again, how does that entitle you to any compensation?
I will have to pay for therapy for my son now. Maybe even ask my congregation to pray over him. That costs money. This is reckless endangerment. Those freaks should be kept away from the innocent, God-fearing people.
One of the other customers in the store said,
Hey, come on, lady, stop it. You've been drumming our ears off for 10 minutes now with your ignorance and your transphobia. If anyone is entitled to compensation, it's us.
The manager stepped in saying, "I agree with him, ma'am. Please leave the premises."
This is not the end of things. I will have your license in no time.
She grabs her kid and then proceeds to leave. The waiter, blocking her way, says, "There is still the matter of the bill, ma'am, and give me the ID back."
I didn't even get to drink my coffee. It's already cold. I shouldn't have to pay.
That sounds like a you problem, but if you want me to call mall security in no time, we can let them settle this, and in the meanwhile, I'll also let them write a report of you having your son that is clearly underage in a smoking area. Now, this kind of complaint may lead to the equivalent of CPS involved if mall security passes the report to the police. Karen is defeated at this point. Such a wonderful view. She threw my ID on the ground, got her kid, and started leaving. As she left, I couldn't help myself. Probably not my brightest moment, but yeah, I was pissed. I said, yelling at her kid, "Hey kiddo, remember, you can be anything you want to be." Karen huffed and puffed and gave me the finger as she walked away. So now that you know how everything went down, am I the jerk? First off, why would she want to take her kids into a smoking area anyway? These are young kids, and she's obviously not smoking, but yet she wants her kids to be around smoke and take up these tables out there. So the whole premise behind trying to get the ID idea in the first place was because of the smoking, but that's obviously when everything radically shifted. I just don't get any situation where somebody's minding their own business and you're going up to them and you're telling them what to do when they're supposed to be there in the first place. But then it turns into this whole situation where she thinks that her kid is being corrupted, but the OP here, the original poster, never would have even talked to either one of them if the lady wasn't demanding the ID of the OP that is sitting in the smoking area smoking. It's one thing to have your beliefs and stand by them, but when someone's minding their own business, they're not encroaching on you, you're encroaching on them, regardless of what side of the fence you land on. The way the lady makes this sound is like they're all three sitting out there, and then the OP goes up and whispers something into the kid's ear, and then all of a sudden the kid starts saying,
"Mommy, I want to be trans."
which is not exactly how it went down. So let me know how you see this situation from whichever country you're from. If you're from Mexico, let me know if this sort of interaction is normal, or whatever country you happen to be from, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. A woman won't let me get into the building where I live and pretends to work there. Here's some context to the story. I live in the center of town that does a yearly half marathon. The marathon route basically traps me in my building as it goes on roads around it, which I need to cross to reach the rest of town. It has been taking place years and was here before me, so I'm not bothered by it. I just avoid leaving my building until most of the runners have gone. On this day, I had an errand to run, but was going out in the afternoon, so was forced to push through the crowds on pavements to then wait and cross through the runners. I managed to get to the shops and do what I needed to do. On my way back, it started hailing a crazy amount. Huge stones that made it look like it had been snowed on. Spectators were sheltering underneath shop awnings, including the one above the door to my building, where a mom and her two younger children were standing. I tell her, "Excuse me, sorry, can I just quickly get through?" The entitled mother, looking absolutely furious, says,
"No, find your own spot. We are standing here."
I think, fair enough, the door isn't too obvious. But I say, no, actually I just live in this building, so I need to get through that door.
"I don't think so. These are offices. I work in them. Don't try and fool me and my girls into moving for you."
They're not offices, so Lord knows why she'd say that. She's still in my way. So I tell her, I really do live here. Look, I have my key and I can open this door.
"No, can you just piss off and go somewhere else?"
She is being loud, so everyone nearby can hear and is staring. I tell her, look, I really do just want to get into my home. Everyone is looking at us now, so if I'm just trying to get you out of the way, I don't think they'll put up with that, do you?
"Fine. Remember, everyone is looking."
She moves, so I put my key in the door. Cue a surprise, it opens. I give the entitled mother a little wave as I walk through, and I see a couple of onlookers stifling some laughter. After all that, the entitled mother walks off with her two daughters into the hail. There's been a lot of comments about why she lied. My building genuinely does look like a block of offices, so my guess is that she was assuming I was lying to get away from the hail and made a quick judgment. I look very young, have pink hair, piercings, and tattoos to decide her lie was more believable than mine. Pro tip, if you can possibly avoid it, I know it's near impossible in busy cities, do not get an apartment in a business area of town or city. People are jerks. This is the worst inconvenience. But we get so much staring and people looking into our lobby when we're unloading food, shopping, moving big items, just leaving the building. It is annoying. So with all that said, was the mother the jerk? Apparently the mother can just shamelessly lie and not even get embarrassed about it when she's found out. She claimed that she worked in that building, therefore she must know what that building is. So in front of everyone there, she just shamelessly lies about herself and then she gets caught and it's no big deal. She's okay with it. Besides all the reasons the OP gave, it does sound pretty annoying to live in a place like that where for every marathon or parade or whatever it is, your streets are blocked off around you. I've heard of situations where cities will have music festivals downtown, and in some of those cases there are a few last holdout houses, and those people have to walk through metal detectors in order to leave their own homes, and they're escorted out of the festival because they don't get a free ticket to go to the festival that is surrounding their actual house. So they're constantly going in and out of metal detectors during the entire length of that festival. This situation kind of sounds like that, except it's a lot shorter of a time period. So if you're in this situation, let me know how you would handle it down below in jerk or not a jerk and why. My parents' polyamorous partner tries to parent me. Am I the jerk for refusing to apologize to my parents' polyamorous partner? I'm a 16-year-old female. My parents, who are both 36 years old, became poly 4 years ago. They came to me and explained what it meant to be that. They've been dating the same person, Madison, who's a 27-year-old female, for the past 3 years, and she moved in with us 2 years ago. She's overall an okay-ish person, but she's very much into being some kind of cool mom, which she will never be for me. My parents' relationship with Madison is very serious. Both of my families know her, and while not everyone accepts her as a real part of the marriage, they're okay with her too. For me, she's more like a roommate my parents love rather than a parent figure or someone that I have to listen to. My dad is okay with her trying to discipline me, but my mom is not. Well, 2 days ago, my boyfriend walked me home and I invited him to have a piece of cake since my mom's birthday was the day before and he couldn't come. He said yes, and we went inside, and that's honestly everything we did. Madison came home an hour after and we were still in the kitchen, eating and watching TikToks together. I had my head on his shoulder and we were just chilling. She saw us and began to act very weird. She said hi and drank a glass of water, but after 10 minutes, she just stood there pretending to watch her phone, but it was pretty obvious she was watching us. My boyfriend felt uncomfortable and he said his goodbyes. When Madison and I were left alone, she approached me saying that it wasn't okay being alone with a boy at 16 years old and she would appreciate that I don't do it again. I was honestly shocked. My parents know my boyfriend pretty well, and more than that, they know me. I would never betray their trust by doing something I'm not allowed yet just because I was alone. She wanted to keep talking, but I cut her off and said that she had no right to give me the talk and she wasn't my parent in any form to try and parent me or give me unsolicited advice. She said that she was just trying to help me, but I said she better not. And any concern she had, she could talk it through with my real parents to see if it fits, and they will talk to me. But just because she was dating them both didn't make her mommy too, and I went to my room. This morning while my dad drove me to school, he said that Madison talked to both of them and my mom decided that she overstepped, but that he agreed with her and he would appreciate a heads up when my boyfriend and I are alone, and that if it was okay for me, I could apologize. But I said I didn't feel like it, and he said he was disappointed. Update from the future. Per my last update, around 5 p.m., my mom got home, and 30 or so minutes later, I asked my dad and her if we could talk. Madison was at the gym, so we just sat on the couch and I was honest. I told my mom what my dad had said in the morning ride, and I confessed to my dad that it was unfair that just because Madison thought it was improper of us, my boyfriend and I, to be alone in the house, he suddenly changes the game. I've always been completely honest with them, and I reminded them so. I said that as soon as we got home, I sent them a text telling them that I was already here and that my boyfriend was over, and he said nothing there. I also told him that I didn't feel comfortable with Madison living here and that maybe I never was. But I was so young to understand what it really meant to have poly parents, and while I don't really care for the romantic life ever since Madison snitched on me, it had made me feel like I'm walking on eggshells in my own house, and that my dad saying he was disappointed felt like Madison matters more than me in the house. I've always been a loner, always. I spent time with my parents, yes, but I love to be alone in my room, in the kitchen, in the living room, doing my own stuff. I've never had to hide for anything, but Madison proved that whatever she doesn't like or she thinks that I shouldn't be doing, she'll spy and tell. And it wasn't fair because while Madison is nothing to me and her opinion doesn't matter, I've proved to them that I can be trusted and I don't like doing things like that behind their back. While saying that, my voice cracked and my dad came to my side and hugged me, saying he was so sorry and that I was right. He apologized to me again for the way that he acted in the car and that he should have never said he was disappointed because he wasn't, that he couldn't have asked for a better kid, and that he felt so bad for hurting me to the point that I had to talk to them alone. He hugged me, and my mom just looked at him and said they had to talk to Madison alone because she has said countless times that she doesn't appreciate her giving advice or thinking that she has some kind of responsibility over me. She also said that I never ever have to walk on eggshells in here because this is my house and will forever be my house, and if I didn't act shamefully, then I don't have to be ashamed, and gave me a kiss on the forehead. She asked me to call my boyfriend so they could apologize to him and gave us some money to go to Starbucks for a few hours, and so we did. I honestly don't know everything that happened between them and Madison, but my dad said that he was tired of having to please women in his life, and that whatever he did for mom was a wrong for Madison and vice versa, and that for a while he has wanted to break that relationship but wasn't sure if my mom wanted to because despite not agreeing in parenting choices, my mom loved her a lot and it showed. But my mom said she was done too, and they will be attending couples counseling to see where it gets them. They also gave Madison 2 weeks to move out, but she was already packing when I got home, and she went to stay with her parents. She glared at me once, and apart from that, didn't even look at me again. So I guess there's that. That's the update. My parents broke up with Madison and I got to talk to them. It's really weird not having her around, but I really like it. My mom read this post and some of the responses. My dad decided not to because everything was settled. After reading the post, my mom also apologized for bringing Madison in with me so young, and while I said I didn't really mind, she said sorry. So was I the jerk for refusing to apologize to my parents' poly partner. I'm kind of surprised that despite all the decisions that led up to this point, the parents actually heard her out. I feel like a lot of times when something really emotional happens to you, parents will dismiss it or write it off or not really take it seriously. But in this case, not only did they listen and try to understand, they actually ended the relationship with Madison full stop. Leading up to this point, the parents were obviously not on the same page when it came to the OP. One of the top responses highlighted this, referring to the section where the OP said, "My dad is okay with her trying to discipline me, but my mom is not." Right off the bat, this had me mildly concerned. That's kind of a big thing to disagree on. What were they thinking? If you guys have been watching the channel for a long time, you probably remember way back there was a story about the kids that disowned their polyamorous parents. They just completely cut them out of their lives for good. But if I remember right in that story, the parents never told the kids. It was a big secret, and then when it got found out, that's what made the adult kids say that it was morally wrong and they want nothing to do with them no matter what. In this case, it's a lot different because the kid was way younger when this was revealed to them, and they didn't really have the ability to process everything that it meant, as the OP kind of said here. To be specific, she says, "I also told them that I didn't feel comfortable with Madison living here and that maybe I never was, but I was so young to understand what it really meant to have poly parents." So with all that said, what would you do if you were in this situation, and jerk or not a jerk? And when you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories in this series, use the playlist at the top of the description. A Karen on a plane thinks that she is entitled to a first class upgrade for free after booking the aisle seat and the window seat, but not the middle seat, and then getting furious that she didn't get the middle seat included because she had the aisle and the window. The middle seat was my seat. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. Due to a new procurement process at work nobody cares about, I booked a flight to my conference destination really late. All that was left were middle seats, or ponying up personally, for an upgrade, which wasn't going to happen for a relatively short flight. Out in the boarding area, they announced many times that it was a full flight and kept begging people to gate check their bags. It was not subtle. After they let all the military, first class, frequent flyers, and blah 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 blah, more time needed people board, my group got to plot down the jetway. Once we got to the plane, I could see my fate before me. A wild Karen was sitting in an aisle seat. The middle was piled with Karen crap. A backpack, electronic devices, stuffed animals, snacks, and a miniature Karen was over in the window seat, happily kicking the empty seat in front of her so hard it was visibly shaking. That's, I count the rows, definitely mine. When I got to the row, I pointed to the middle seat to indicate that it's mine. Karen did not budge or move a single thing from her crap hinge. I tried again with the whole, "I'm sorry, that's my seat" routine. She snapped at me and said,
You sit somewhere else.
I say, "I can't do that. It's a full flight. This is my assigned seat." Well, Karen wasn't having that. Did I know what kind of day she'd had? It had started the day before. Their flight was diverted. They missed their connection. They slept in the airport overnight. They just needed a little space. Sit somewhere else, is basically what she told me, and she shoved her knees up full against the seat in front of her, blocking my way before she loaded it with Karen Cruft in the middle seat. Then she shut her eyes and pretended to be asleep. I slammed the flight attendant button over her head and awkwardly crouched in the row behind so people can get past me. We'd already made a scene and clogged up boarding. As I crouched there, I realized nothing about Karen's story made sense. We weren't at the big city airport where flights sometimes get diverted. We were at the tiny regional airport that only had a couple of airlines that flew to a few major hubs. No connections happened there. There also wasn't a bunch of other people griping about missed connections, diversions, or having slept in the airport. When a tiny regional airport has that happen, you know, everybody knows. Karen was probably lying. Anyhow, the saintly flight attendant arrived to ask what was wrong. She checked my ticket. Yeah, that was unfortunately my seat. Then she asked Karen to see her and the kids' tickets. Karen kept her eyes closed and continued to pretend to be asleep. I don't know how she thought that would work, but the flight attendant shook her shoulder several times and began speaking loudly to her. You must remember, boarding is going on all around this. People were hefting bags, trying to find seats, and the usual loud mayhem. It was ridiculous. The flight attendant told Karen that if she didn't respond, paramedics would be called about an unresponsive passenger. That got Karen's attention. She popped up and demanded,
What? I'm trying to sleep.
and then went off on the same rant she did at me about her travel nightmare and needing the space. The flight attendant explained that it was a full flight. All of the seats were booked. Standby passengers were waiting for any extras, and Karen needed to let me sit. This sent Karen into wails over being separated from her baby by a stranger. The flight attendant pointed out that she booked the aisle and the window seats herself, leaving that separation, so she could either ask me to swap or sit in them as assigned. That sent off another rant. Apparently, some frequent flyer / travel advice site out there says to book the window and aisle and hope nobody sits in the middle so that you get a free space. I imagine this works on flights that aren't full. This one was full. Karen swore that she got that tip for how to get an extra seat free off the airline's website and threw quite a fit after they told her to do that. She was being punished by being separated from her baby. Meanwhile, the people on the row in front arrived and the mini Karen was still kicking away like she was at soccer practice. It was so bad the guy in the window seat didn't even want to sit down. He leaned over and asked the kid to stop kicking. Mini Karen let out an unholy wail of
Stranger!
that she had apparently been trained to do if a stranger spoke to her. Karen turned from her screaming fit at the flight attendant to take in the scene of an adult man in the row in front of her, looking at her child in horror, and the child wailing
Stranger!
at the top of her lungs, only to turn right back to the flight attendant while pointing at that dude and demanding,
Get this speedo off the plane immediately!
That's where the flight attendant went from firm and reasonable to utterly brilliant. She sagely nodded at Karen and said, "We can't remove him from the flight because he hasn't done anything to your child, but we can certainly get you two reseated if you're not comfortable with your current location and situation. Gather your things, we'll take you up to the desk and see if there are any upgrades available for more spacious seats." It was amazing. Karen puffed up in self-importance as she gathered her now happy spawn and all their crap. She threw elbows like mad, shoving her way upstream past all the people still trying to board the plane. She'd heard the magic word upgrade, and she was going to get there before it was gone. I sort of cursed to myself that they were probably upgrading her to make her calm down. I was not thrilled that her ridiculous display worked. Then the flight attendant's co-worker came back to ask if I preferred the window or aisle to my middle seat. Aisle, thanks. At least I got that, right? Well, it got better. The flight attendant's co-worker explained that I could relax because Karen and the entitled kid would not be returning. There were no upgrades. It was faster and easier to get them off the flight that way than calling security. They filled the seats with waiting standby passengers, and presumably Karen had plenty of space to sit next to her mini Karen in the terminal while waiting for the next flight. Well played, flight attendants. Well played. I've actually heard a lot of people talk about this strategy of getting the window seat and the aisle seat and hoping nobody will book the middle of it, but I don't know if that actually works. In this case, it didn't because the flight was full, but the Karen in the situation was really counting on it working. She's trying to say that the airline itself is the one who said to do this, which is hilarious. Not that somebody who worked for the airline told her, but that it's actually on the airline's website. So she's probably lying about that. She's probably lying about having missed her flight and having to spend the night in the airport. She's lying about pretending to be asleep as if that would make a difference if you were asleep or not. And then she calls that guy a speedo. It is very weird how that's a lot of people's go-to in a situation where they either need to get a lot of attention or they need to get out of the situation. Yeah, just point at a random person and call them a speedo. That'll take all the heat off of you. So let me know how you would handle the situation down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. I was severely bullied because of my orientation, so I got revenge. I am an athletic gay guy, and I always have been. I was born and raised in Texas, so you can imagine some of the going-ons in my younger years when being gay was less accepted. This was a little over 10 years ago. Freshman year, I'm on the basketball team. I'm not good, not great, just average. The team also takes up a class period, and on some days we have to study instead of practice. One of the kids on the team, M, would constantly give me crap about being gay, calling me an F slur, a queer, and all of the usual slurs. I, always being a pretty amiable guy and extremely slow to action, accepted his insults with open arms. arms. Although I wasn't the star player, among people who knew me, I made sure my nickname was the F slur. I'd always answer yes to everyone who asked, does booty taste good? Or do you have a body count? I never let it show, but this constant disrespect towards me and other people, including teachers, really got to me. He would harass my friends, pick on the boys, catcall, and make lewd comments to the girls. He was the kind of kid who'd do a fake, yes sir, to a teacher who was getting onto him about something. That's when a little birdie told me his dad died 3 years ago and his mom was a lush, a drinker. Despite the fact that I now had this knowledge, I held on to it until I had my chance. M liked to shove people around, but he never did me because I was pretty popular and matched him physically. Like I said, that didn't stop him from picking on people close to me. I started preparing for the fight I knew would come. Working bags, learning footing, all the good stuff. After 3 months of preparation, I felt ready. He came upon me in the bathroom, talked some smack, I don't remember. There were a few of his buddies. Perfect. Remember how I said his dad died? Well, I used that and said, okay, daddy issues, can I call you that? Is not having one really considered a daddy issue? By the way, why are you so fixated on gay things? Why do you ask so many questions? Do you want to try it out? Or was the last thing your dad did to teach you about doming? Admittedly, not the best as I type it out, but it was mean enough. This got him enraged. All the better. He charged at me through the narrow part of the bathroom. My back was to the wall and he was moving too fast. I got out of the way and he harmlessly flung himself against the wall. Harmlessly for him and me. Well, not for long. He had to shift his weight. I to the side. He had already done so. It was a one-punch KO to the side of the jaw. This guy had never been in a real fight before. It only took me raising a middle finger at the 3 friends that he had brought in with him to make them reconsider their dedication to the mission at hand. Next, I soccer ball kicked, shoe to face, while he was down 4 times. My shoes were smeared with blood. A few more kicks downstairs after that, spat on the back of his head, and walked away. I never talked to M again. I never cared how he was doing, but today I had seen his face and it certainly wasn't the one he had been born with. Naturally, word of the fight spread around and I got in some big trouble. I was suspended, but the motto, don't mess with the F slur, spread around real quick. As far as I know, nobody ever did. This was a lot more intense than I expected. Unfortunately, there are certain situations in life where you can't be passive. You have to do something in response to something happening to you, or else it's going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. That doesn't mean you have to go through with what he did here. There's probably other ways, but maybe he felt like there was no other option and he wanted to nip it in the bud before it got even worse. But let me know how you see this situation. Do you think it was going too far, or do you think he had no other options? Let me know down below. I am breaking off my engagement because my fiance might get sick in the future. My fiance and I have been together for 5 years. He's the love of my life, and I literally can't imagine being without him. So the thought of doing this is making my stomach roll. He was adopted, and neither he nor his parents knew much about his medical history. A few weeks ago, he met his biological brother for the first time and found out that his birth father had passed from Huntington's disease. There is a 50% chance that my fiance also has the genetic defect that causes Huntington's, but he refuses to get tested. It's not the disease that I'm scared of, it's the not knowing. If we know he'll get it, we can prepare financially, practically, and emotionally. He says a positive test will hold him back from living his life, but I feel like it's the opposite. How can we live with this giant maybe looming over us? How can I make smart decisions on where to live, how to budget, or even whether or not to have biological children with this man if I'm not allowed to have all the facts? So I've come to the decision that I have to break it off. I respect his decision, but I can't understand or accept it. I have literally no one I can talk to about it because it's his secret and not mine to tell. I have to go to work now, but I'll continue to respond to questions throughout the day, especially to the comments that exactly mirror the dissenting voice in my head. I just want to clarify a few things first. Number 1, I would not leave him if he was tested positive for the defect. I would not leave him if he got sick. I just want to plan for us to be able to afford the best life and care for him if he does, which means we'd have to start immediately. Number 2, I don't want or need perfect children. That isn't realistic, but it is possible to avoid them being subjected to a 50-50 chance of having this disease. Of course, there are alternative options, but again, they involve preparation and planning. I'm more than willing to take a full genetic panel as well. Number 3, yes, one or both of us could get cancer or permanently disabled in an accident, or any number of things, but I've come to learn that you can't plan for every unpredictable thing life throws at you. This is the rare occasion that we do have the opportunity to prepare. pair. Number 4, essentially it comes down to the fact that we are incompatible. Regardless of how much we love each other, I'm a planner and he's very laid back. Until now, these traits have complemented each other, but unfortunately they've brought us to an impasse that I don't think we can both move forward from happily. I'm floored at all of these responses, supportive and otherwise. At the very least, I feel validated that this is a complex issue with no clear and obvious answer. I've decided to take a few steps back. Those of you who brought up the fact that a few weeks is probably too little time for him to fully process his possible diagnosis have a really valid point. Just because I want to immediately jump into problem solving mode doesn't mean it's necessarily the right thing to do here. So I'm not leaving yet, at least, and hopefully never. I'm going to find a therapist to help me work through my anxieties and give my fiance some space, not literally, to work through this. And then we'll revisit this conversation, hopefully with more patience on my part and willingness to act on his. Jumping into the future, there is an update. I'm not sure if it was obvious, but I was not in a good place when I made that post. When I stress, I don't sleep or eat. For him, it may have only been a few weeks to accept the situation, but for me, it was a few weeks of non-stop anxiety, where I was lucky to get even an hour of restless sleep at night. I was plain exhausted on top of everything else, and only began to consider leaving when I started to hit my breaking point. Anyway, we talked about it at length. We cried, we fought, we researched. I showed him empathy, we consulted with friends, family, specialists. We pressed pause for days or weeks when we needed a break from the whole thing. And in the end, he agreed to have the test. Guys, to say we dodged an absolute maelstrom of bullets would be putting it mildly. He's negative for both the developing disease himself as well as the risk of passing it on. No matter what else happens, this is one area where he's assuredly safe. All of this said, once the euphoria faded, we decided that it was necessary to put a hold on our engagement and take some time apart. I still love him with all my heart, but this was our first serious disagreement as a couple, and it forced us to seriously reflect on ourselves and our relationship. Neither of our positions were wrong, but they were so disparate that there was no realistic compromise. I spent the last few months traveling abroad, and other than a few texts, we haven't spoken much, but I'm home now and we have our second first date tonight. Wish me luck. Here are the answers to a few of the final questions. Number 1, I mentioned this a million times in my first post, but here it goes again. I had no plans to leave him if he tested positive. I just needed to know so that we could plan our lives accordingly. Number 2, we decided together to take a break. It's been an incredibly difficult, emotionally charged roller coaster of a year. I didn't leave him. Number 3, we planned from day 1 to keep communication to a minimum. It was difficult. I actually began keeping a journal of all the things I wanted to call or text him about. It's extensive and I can't wait to share it with him. Number 4, I didn't give him an ultimatum, but I understand why that's the takeaway. I only said here that I was thinking of leaving and I know that it was rash and irrational. So was I the jerk for how I handled the situation? It seems like no matter how many times the OP here said that she would stay with him, even if he was positive, even if he did get sick, people don't really seem to hear that part. As she said many times already, she just wants to know so she can plan accordingly. I know that some people doubted that, saying that she would just find another excuse to leave once they found out that he was positive, but there's not really anything to suggest that that's what she would do. She's saying the exact opposite of that. I think it would be really tough to live under this constant looming impending doom that may or may not come. That's kind of why it's one of the most popular would you rather questions about if you could know the exact day that you would die, would you choose to know that information or would you choose not to know that information? I'll actually put that up as a poll in the community post section of the channel. Some people argue that knowing the exact day would make it so that they would live their life to the fullest, and other people argue that knowing it will hold them back from living their lives. I mean, the exact words were, he says a positive test result will hold him back from living his life, but I feel like it's the opposite. So when it comes to this specific topic, they are fundamentally in two opposing camps. I'm glad to hear that ultimately he didn't have it, but how would you have handled the situation? Let me know down below. Am I the jerk for leaving the restaurant before my boyfriend's family arrived after I was told that I was going to pay for their meals? I'm a 29-year-old female and I've been dating my boyfriend who's 35, Ricky, for 5 months. He's divorced but hates this word and goes with the word divorcee instead because the first word, divorced, makes it sound like he was dumped when it was him who initiated it. Anyways, he always goes on long rants about his exes and says stuff like, I hope you don't have this awful habit my ex has, or I hope you like X, Y, and Z because my ex didn't, and the list goes on. I found a second job recently and he's been having me pay every time we go out. When I I protest, he'd say he's going through a rough patch and is seeing how much help I can offer. Last night, he invited his family to join us for dinner. We got to the restaurant first. He asked me if I brought enough money. I said, why? And he told me that he told his parents that I'd pay for their meals. I said, why would I? And he went on about his parents going through a rough patch just like him. I said, I'm sorry, this can't be a coincidence. He asked what I meant and I told him that I would not be paying. He insisted. I refused and said no. He then leaned back and said, well, you're here, so not much of a choice you have anyway. He said this while laughing like it was funny. I silently got up, took my phone and my purse, and I walked right out. He was shocked. He started shouting after me to stop and wait, but I didn't. I went home and he called me in rage, saying that I did a horrible thing walking out on him and his parents while I could have just paid. I told him that their unfortunate financial situation isn't my problem and that I wasn't obliged to pay for their food. If they couldn't pay for their meals, then they should not go out. He got offended and said, and I quote, "You're making money a priority just like my ex did." Then he went on about how disrespectful my attitude was and how I made him look small in front of his parents and forced him to lie about why I wasn't there when they came. We've been going back and forth about it until now. He's mad and is refusing to speak to me until I apologize. I feel bad because his parents are lovely and I've been doing my best to keep a good relationship with them. So, am I the jerk? Right out the gate, just the fact that the boyfriend is comparing the OP to his ex-girlfriends is already pretty toxic. There's one thing to talk about it and say, hey, these things really bothered me about these other people in the past, but to say you better not be like this, you better not be like that, you better be like this is not healthy at all. Really, for either side, because with the boyfriend, it creates this sort of untrue portrait of the person that he's dating, and for the girlfriend, obviously, she's in a position where she has to constantly contort herself to be what he's describing and to not be what he's describing as well. And then on top of all of that, he's trying to set her up to pay for everything, which is also weird. Let me know how you would handle the situation down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. A man in his 60s named Richard has a dispute with his HOA, the Homeowners Association. They don't like his lawn, so they try and send their own landscapers out in order to fix it. When they do that, they send Richard an invoice for it. Richard doesn't like that at all. So the next time the HOA tries to send landscapers to his house, he blocks access so the landscapers can't get to it. The HOA sends him the invoice anyway. And it happens again and again. After a year, he has so many invoices that the HOA has sent him for this whole landscaping situation that the debt crushes him and he loses his house. It's foreclosed on. Before he's forced to leave, he utterly destroys the house from the inside. And then he does the unthinkable. He goes back to the HOA and takes the lives of its members. When asked why he did this, he said, "I was getting even." Here's what happened in this horrible situation. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. So to start off, this is a pretty old story that I remember not long after I moved out to the backwater armpit of Satan that we call Arizona, and was instrumental in my parents not buying a house in a neighborhood with an HOA initially. So here's the backstory. This part of the story takes place shortly before the year 2000. In my state, we have numerous retiree communities that are run by HOAs, homeowners associations. The vast majority of them, in my experience, are as a respite and habilitation provider that can be summarized simply as near to full on tyrannical in their intercommunity politics, often targeting members out of the clique, while heavily favoring those who fell in line. In this case, it started with Richard and the new HOA board, henceforth going to be abbreviated as NHB, new HOA board, for convenience sake. Richard had lived in his house in the community under the prior HOA board for close to 10 years. Before that, a community mailbox was installed near his driveway and had the borders of his house lined with row hedges. These two details will be important later. However, around early 2000, a new HOA governing board was elected. By this time, many others had moved into the area and began parking in front of the aforementioned mailbox, a number of which, to my memory, were NHB board members. Richard had at first tried talking to the offending mailbox blockers that would block his driveway. Eventually, however, he would resort to simply parking his car in front of the driveway and by extension, the mailboxes. In retaliation, the NHB would tow his car and invoice Richard for it. In addition to this, Richard was not the type to constantly preen and prune his hedges around around his house or keep the lawn well kept. The HOA as a result began sending landscapers to trim them for him and would naturally invoice him every time they did for the bill. Richard both verbally and in writing in rather rude terms requested they not send them and denied the landscapers access to his house, but he was still invoiced for their being contracted even though they were sent away. Eventually, as I remember, the NHB would send the landscapers to his home when he was away or not home and then still invoice him the costs after. Finally, having enough, Richard ended up killing off his lawn and hedges to force the NHB to stop sending landscapers. But due to laws in my state and the NHB's bylaws, they were able to sue for the cost of all the invoices sent over the course of nearly a year or so and managed to foreclose on Richard's house for the unpaid fees. So he was forced to move out and chose to move to California for a time. This is where the revenge begins. With the events leading up to the nuclear revenge set in place, now we can discuss Richard's revenge. Richard had practically been living out of a trailer for a little while stewing over his treatments at the hands of his former NHB. Richard had still owned a storage unit in Arizona, which contained his arms, a boomstick, and 2 semi-auto gats. That April, he returned to Arizona with one goal in mind: revenge. Richard's former HOA held official meetings bi-yearly, with other smaller meetings for emergencies or when voted to convene. Richard entered the NHB's meeting with his arms, opened fire, and ended the life of 2 board members outright, wounding one more and wounding another during a scuffle with another man trying to wrestle his boomstick away from him. When Richard was later questioned why he committed the crime, his only response was, "I was getting even." Later, Richard was sentenced to death for the murders, but he ended up passing away of natural causes while still on death row. In the end, the HOA was disbanded for some time following the wake of the murders. They have at this point re-established, but from what I recall, they've been quite careful who they elect to the board. And that's the story as I remember it. Sorry if some details are a little vague, sparse, or slightly off. These events happened almost 20 years ago now, and I was fairly young at the time. Having only been told the story later by my father and friends and a little side research of my own, I thought it might fit well. So if for some reason you don't believe this story, this is one of the stories that actually had news coverage. So there's a few different articles on this if you want to read more. I'll leave links to them on the Am I the Jerk Discord and on the Am I the Jerk Twitter. Whatever's more convenient for you if you want to read more. So obviously, it goes without saying that the way that Richard handled this is never the way to handle anything, clearly. But how would you handle a situation where you own a house and it gets foreclosed on because of invoices that the HOA is sending to you from these landscapers? So let's break this down. In a lot of these stories where people are pushed to the brink, it always seems like eventually one of these people is just going to totally snap, and that's exactly what happened in this story. He pretty much threw his life away by ending their lives. Obviously, we don't get to hear from his perspective, so we don't know what type of mindset that he was in going into all of this. Not that that would ever excuse it, but if I had to guess, I would say he was probably coming from a place of desperation. In one of the articles, it says that he was 61 years old. And as a lot of you guys know, financial wipeouts tend to be more devastating the older you are because it's the less time you have to rebuild. And this was not only a financial wipeout, but he no longer had a place to live anymore. In the article, they got some quotes from one of the people that was in the room, a 76-year-old guy who said he just came in, stood in the rear of the room and started firing. I mean, hearing that is so sad that people would have to go through that. In another section of the same article, it says that before he left after his home was sold, neighbors and others said he destroyed his interior, sawing through cabinets and removing the dishwasher and the kitchen sink. A former associate vice president that they got this quote from said he took a chainsaw to the doors, took a chainsaw to the plastic tub, and the plastic shower stall. He also etched big X's on the Arcadia doors, pulled down the sheetrock, cut the wiring in the walls. So he went full on nuclear when he lost his home. If you've ever been evicted, you can probably relate to how powerless you feel, especially if you're really young and you don't have the means to save the situation. That happened to me when I was a lot younger too, but we never destroyed anything. We just left it as it was. I hear stories about people putting cockroach babies in the floors and bugs in the walls and cement down the drains, all sorts of stuff to try and completely make the house uninhabitable for the next person. So let me know how you see this situation. Obviously what he did is not the right answer, but what do you think would have been? Let me know what you think down below. I won over $5,000 in court because of a car accident that I caused. So for a little information before I get into the story, I'm a 22-year-old male, I work in construction, I run a few crews, and I'm a foreman because I've been working in this field since I started working summers when I was 14 years old. That's legal in my state. With this being said, I have a lot of experience and I get paid really well. For my job, I need a truck that can pull a lot of trailers and also get into a lot of sketchy job sites, especially in the winter. So I drive a new lifted pickup F350. Anyway, let's get into it. So about 4 months ago now, I got off of work one day and I just really didn't feel like making dinner. So I decided to get myself the trusty Big Mac at McDonald's. Well, after I got my order, I was going to pull out into the parking lot to drive home, and I was looking hard over my left to see how busy the road was before I got there. Well, I wasn't paying great attention to what was happening in front of me, and as I was creeping forward, someone who was in front of me was stopped and not paying attention either. I ended up barely hitting his mirror and scraping his door with my front end. I immediately reversed and hopped out. I made sure the guy was okay and apologized, knowing that it was my fault, and I asked him if he wanted to call the cops. Let's call this guy Brent. Brent says, "Nah, bro, we're good." If you could just get me your insurance info, I think we could get this taken care of. I was fine with that as there was no damage done to my truck and it's not required to call the cops for an accident if it occurs in a private parking lot. This is relevant later. We exchanged information and he seemed pretty cool. So I tell him to go get the damage bid and I'll just pay in cash so my insurance rates don't go up as long as he's okay with it. He says that's fine and we both just leave and I feel like a moron, but all in all, Brent seems like a cool dude and I just hope we can get it sorted out smoothly. About a month passes by and I haven't heard anything from Brent or the shop that I told him to go to. Honestly, I wasn't too stressed about this because if he decided not to get it done, that's on him. Well, he calls me one day at about noon saying he can't remember my name and he wanted to tell the guys at the shop who sent him there because it seemed like we knew each other. I told him my name and the guys at the shop gave him a deal. Pretty sure they say this to everyone. He sends me the bid for the damages and it comes out to $2,403. This was more than I imagined, but I said to get it done and I'd take care of the bill afterward, and that was that. He hung up, said it was cool, and I went on with my day as usual. Another month goes by and I don't hear anything until Brent calls me up while I'm at work again and says, "Hey brother, I talked to the shop and they said they can't get me in for another 2 weeks or so, and they may end up charging me more if they find more damage." I say, "Okay, sounds good. Just let me know, man. I hope it goes smooth for you and I'm sorry for the inconvenience." He seemed to take it good and I'm really just trying to be a good person. He responds with, "Well, after talking to my wife, I'm okay if you just wanted to write a check for $2,500 and we can call it even." This seemed odd to me because why wouldn't someone want their vehicle repairs all paid for? I say, "Okay, man, let's set a time and place to meet and I'll get you paid." He liked the idea and ended the call by telling me he would let me know. Yet another month passes by and I hear nothing. At this point, I'm getting fed up and I just want the situation to stop being over my head. He hits me up at 11 p.m. one night and asks if we can meet in town. I found this kind of disrespectful because I was nearly asleep and I had to be at work at 5 a.m. the next day. Either way, I said that was fine and took my $2,500 cash and wrote up a quick contract saying this payment would be accepted as payment in full for the damages, and by accepting it, it would release me from any and all liability. This was a pretty fair contract, I believe, as it was the deal we had already made over the phone, just in writing. I get to the place we suggested as a meetup spot, I give him the cash, and he signs the contract without hardly even reading it, and he didn't want the copy. This was a red flag to me, but I just assumed he really didn't care about it all that much, so I just sent him the photo of the contract and go back home for some beauty sleep. And as you can guess by now, another month goes by with me just living life carefree and not a worry in the world about this stupid car accident. While I go to check my mail and I have a notice from this guy's lawyer that he is suing me for not paying after wrecking his car. This pissed me off, but I also knew I had plenty of text messages and a contract on my side. I immediately called Brent and he blocks my number. Luckily enough, my girlfriend works for a lawyer, so I get him updated and he says that he'd love to help. He lets me know that I saved my butt by writing that contract, as any contract worth over $500 is to be held up up in any level court in my state. I immediately get to work on my revenge. I remember on the side of this guy's car, he had a business logo and I took pictures of the damage, so I hop online, get to the Better Business Bureau to look up who owns this company, thinking that surely he couldn't own the business because he is such an idiot. I was wrong. This guy owns that company, and I see that he has about 12 one-star reviews, all in dispute because of his shady business practices, telling people it will cost one thing and then charging them 4 times what he said it would. Sound familiar? Remember when he said the shop may charge more than the original $2,403? That's right. He was suing me for $10,000. 4 times what the shop told him it would cost. Unbelievable. He was trying his same sneaky tactics on me. My lawyer takes note of this and we show up to court ready for war. This guy is sleazy. As we get there and all set up, he says, "You ready to give me some more daddy's money?" With a smirk. I guess just because I'm young and I drive a nice truck and I could afford $2,500. His lawyer gets up and starts trying to say this nonsense about me hitting and running, and Brent barely got a picture of my license plate. So I tried to bully him into taking a deal for only $2,500 when the damage was clearly more than that. There were obvious holes in this story. And he really didn't have much to say. Just imagine the smile on my face as my lawyer lays out the printouts of our text messages and the physical copy of the contract, which was signed by Brent. His lawyer was ghostly white and looked sick. After laying out all the evidence, my lawyer pulled out a little hidden gem, the printouts of all the complaints we found on the Better Business Bureau and how he was doing the same thing to me. That was the final nail in the coffin, as the judge said he had seen enough. He asked Brent for any final statements and Brent said, "I don't even have the $2,500 anymore. Can I just get that then and we'll be okay?" Literally admitting to the judge that he had received my money and his story was just a load of nonsense. I thought his lawyer was going to strangle him. It was beautiful. The judge ended up ruling in my favor and demanded him to pay my legal fees as well as damages and lost wages because I had to miss work to be in court. The absolute sweetest part was that this particular day my crew was on a very high wage job and I was technically the one getting paid before I paid them out as subcontractors. This means I was to be paid $475 an hour, and this whole ordeal took about 5 hours. He ended up having to pay me almost $5,000. I don't think I've ever been so happy in my life. So was my revenge enough? So this scammer guy was not very smart. He signed a contract that said that he received the $2,500 and then pretends like that didn't happen, like it was a hit and run, and then accidentally admits that he did get the $2,500. I wouldn't be surprised if he was lying about the quote on his car in the first place, that it didn't even cost $2,500. When the scammer guy told the OP the price the first time, the OP says, "This was more than I imagined, but I said to get it done and I take care of it afterwards." So just due to the fact that he was shocked that it will cost so much based on the minimal damage, I would just call the shop and say, "Hey, what did you actually quote this guy for this car?" If he ever even came in at all, because maybe the damage is only a tiny fraction of that and he can get back most of the $2,500 also on top of the $5,000 he got for missing his work. There are some scammers out there that are so sophisticated, so meticulous, that it's almost like it's more work than actually doing a normal job. But this guy is not that. He's a lazy scammer, and it's to the point where his lawyer is embarrassed about it because he was blindsided. I don't know what the legal term is, maybe one of you guys know, but in some cases I know that you can't actually bring in character establishing details that don't have to do with the case, or whatever the correct term is for that. In this case, that would be bringing in the 12 one-star reviews to show the judge. I know in some cases you're not allowed to do stuff like that, but here, maybe you were allowed to do that and she just based his character on those reviews. So if anything like this has ever happened to you, submit your stories, or if it hasn't, what would you do if you're in this situation? Let me know down below. Am I the jerk for literally showing my dad how he behaves every day when he gets home from work? I'm a 16-year-old female and my father is 46. He's the breadwinner while my mom is a stay-at-home mom. She handles everything around the house like cooking, mopping, washing, laundry, etc. I'm the oldest and I try to help, but really there's only so much I can do while my dad just gets home at the end of the day and literally complains about everything, like how the carpet isn't clean or how the food is cold. As a result, I'd have to listen to a huge argument daily between him and my mom. It's exhausting, but honestly, I think my dad is in the wrong here. I tried talking to him to get him to see how his behavior is, but to no avail. So what I did was pick pick a day off for him and pretend to act like him. I put together an outfit that looked like a suit and put black tape over my lips to look like a mustache. At 6 p.m., I went inside the house. I shouted, "I'm home," then sat down next to him in the living room and started kicking my shoes while complaining about the state of the house at the top of my lungs. He glanced at me confused, asking what I was doing. I ignored him, then started yelling about the carpet being dirty, the shower not being ready, the kids needing to be quiet, and so on. He kept staring while mom and my siblings laughed. My youngest brother kept pointing towards me saying,
"This is Daddy."
I then proceeded to yell about dinner and then berated my mom for not preparing it before time. My dad stopped me and in a serious tone asked me what I was doing. I turned to him and said, "What, can a man rest after working long hours?" in the most macho voice I could muster. My dad got the hint because this was the common phrase he uses daily. He went quiet and avoided looking at me. I stopped the act and told him I was trying to show him what he's like every day when he comes home from work. He said nothing. He just went outside and refused to speak to me. Later on, he went on about how I mocked him and invalidated him, that he does work hard and me doing this was disrespectful and invalidating. My mom said that it was funny, but also thought that I hurt my dad's feelings and I could have gotten the message across some other way instead. So, am I the jerk? It sounds like the OP isn't able to communicate how much him acting like this bothers her in the first place, so doing something like this is her form of communication to show him how he makes them feel every day. He's upset about his feelings being hurt, but their feelings are probably hurt every day and he's not listening to them. As some of the top responses said, she basically held up a mirror to his behavior and he didn't like what he saw. And that may be true, but it seems like he didn't even see himself in this until she said his catchphrase, "Can't a man rest after working long hours?" That's when he realized what was going on. Let me know how you see the situation down below and jerk or not a jerk and why. I'm a 21-year-old female and my mom just asked me to hook up with my stepdad. Seriously. She said that she would be in the room while we were doing the deed and she would be okay with it. I also have 4 younger sisters and I don't know how to tell them about this without bashing my parents. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. My mom had me at 18 years old right out of high school. Long story short, my dad died at 19 while he was away at university. Then my mom remarried at 21 and had my sisters. My stepdad, we'll call him Scott, was the only father I've known. He's been a great father, nothing out of the ordinary, absolutely perfect parenting until I turned 19 years old. I remember Scott becoming a little more touchy than normal and a little too personal. He would offer me drinks, I declined, and would ask me about my private life after one too many glasses. I brushed it off because I thought maybe he was being a nosy father and just wanted to make sure his daughter wasn't doing the deed. Then this kind of continued to the point where my stepdad tried to kiss me last year. I told my mom and she just laughed and told me, "That's how he gets after too many drinks." I knew then that I had to make plans to leave, so I started saving up. After that incident, things died down a bit until my mom got pregnant at 39. It's a higher risk pregnancy, so she's on a lot of bed rest, taking extra care of herself per her doctor. A couple of weeks ago, my mom and Scott sat me down and told me her doctor said she should avoid doing the deed during pregnancy due to various health reasons I won't get into. Then they asked me if I could do the deed with Scott until she was able to do the deed with him again. Of course I said no. I was livid. I was crying. She told me that she'd be okay with it and that she'd be in the room as well. I told her that was even worse. What were they thinking? I have enough money for an apartment. I got approved. I'm signing my lease next week. My parents are ignoring me and the whole house is full of tension. My younger sisters don't understand what's going on and my mom told me not to say anything. But my sisters are smart and they know something is really up and won't stop asking me about it, especially the oldest. She came to me crying today and told me I better tell her what's going on. I didn't say anything. So, does anyone have any advice? What do I tell her? What do I say to the younger ones? How do I tell a 16-year-old about this without being inappropriate or bashing my parents? The original poster gave more information in a response to one of the top responses, which said, bashing your parents would be unfairly putting them down for something benign. What they've done is wrong and sick on so many levels. Forget about not wanting to be inappropriate because it's more important to prevent you from dealing with them, and it is highly likely that your other sisters will be subjected to this if they have not already, and they are younger and more easily victimized. You could speak to your teen sisters privately and ask them if they've had any uncomfortable experiences with your stepdad, like him talking too much about adult things or making advances, and make it clear that you are a safe person to confide in. I would also reach out to a trusted family member or someone you can ask help from. The OP responds saying, last year when he tried to kiss me, CPS interviewed all the girls and the girls were very confused because their dad has never said or done anything to them inappropriately. My aunt, who is a child therapist, called them to begin with and talked to each girl and said that there were no signs of foul play, which upset her because she really hates Scott, but made her happy because he's done nothing to them. CPS said that this situation was like a roommate complaining about it because I'm not his biological daughter. My aunt has been fighting to make my mom leave for years, but since Scott is not hurtful to her or the girls and he makes a lot of money, she won't leave. But my aunt actually has mentioned that he's been manipulating her with kindness all of these years so she would be okay with him doing the deed with me when I became an adult, and it worked. My aunt and I don't think he's going to hurt the other girls, but you never know. We most likely will have to call the services again. And then in a separate response, my aunt and I are probably going to call again and try and get the girls out and with her, or my grandparents who want them to stay there. My concern is telling the girls. I would be devastated if I was 16 and someone told me my dad tried to do the deed with my sister, so now I have to live with my grandparents. What do I say to her? Do I break her heart? Jumping into the future, there is a whole separate update. In the original post, basically my mom and stepdad asked me to do the deed with my stepdad. I declined, freaked out, and now I am leaving. My concern is for my sisters. My aunt did what she said she was going to do. She barged in with 3 other people, one of them a social worker friend of hers who was off duty, and my uncle. None of them are allowed at the house, so as soon as Scott found out they were there, he called the police. Before the police showed up, I told my 16-year-old sister and the 14-year-olds what happened. The 16-year-old got angry at her dad. She was walking around the house ranting at her dad and crying. Eventually, she decided to come with my aunt and I, and then we would figure out where she could go from then on. However, the 2 14-year-olds did not believe me. They actually started laughing. They got angry and told me that I was trying to destroy our family, and how could you make up such a sick lie? It got to the point where they threw my and my 16-year-old sister's stuff out the window. By that time, the cops came and told my aunt, uncle, and the social worker that they had to leave the property. The social worker friend let the cops know everything that's been going on. The cops didn't care. They just cared about the noise and the trespassers. So I, my 16-year-old sister, my aunt and uncle, and their friend left. Very soon after, my grandparents came over and got the other 3 girls. After the 14-year-olds called them and came to their senses, I found out from my grandma that one of the 14-year-olds confronted her dad and he didn't deny anything. In fact, he called me a floozy and said that I shouldn't have had any problems doing what he asked. That's when they packed a bag and called my grandparents. My grandparents explained everything separately to the little one. She told my grandpa she prefers him to our dad because my grandpa doesn't yell at her. As much as that pained me, I hope it's enough to keep the girls and my grandparents for good. My 16-year-old sister is going to emancipate herself and stay with either our grandparents or our aunts. CPS was called, but it was my grandparents this time. I have multiple screenshots on my and my aunt's phone of my mother incriminating herself, so we will be able to file charges and hopefully get Scott on the offender registry. That way the girls can stay at their grandparents permanently. Also, to explain why aunt wasn't allowed over, because they hate Scott and know he's a creep. Many years ago, when I was about 13 at my younger sister's gender reveal party, my cousin, my uncle's daughter, who is trans, decided at university that she was a female and came back as a female. We all accepted and loved her, just the same except Scott, who got sloshed and lifted her skirt and said,
Do you still have your boy parts under there?
That's when my uncle beat him up and knocked over a couple of tables. From then on, half of my family wasn't allowed back at the house per a trespassing order. They knew then that he was an absolute perv, but I, as a young child, didn't fully comprehend it. So, what should I do? This is a horrifying situation. How can the mother be okay with this no matter what her excuse or rationale is behind her saying she's okay with it? From every angle, they make it very clear that Scott, the stepdad here, is only going after the 21-year-old stepdaughter, the OP, and that he's never done anything like that to the other daughters, the younger ones. But who's to say that he won't do that one day? And I know the people that showed up from the services said that, well, you're not biological, you're more of like a roommate, and they are his biological kids. But the difference is that he raised the OP. Isn't there some sort of fatherly bond that would be fostered during that time that would prevent you from doing this? And about the whole concept of being afraid to bash the parents or breaking the hearts of the other daughters, there was a good response that said, you will never be the one to break her heart in this situation. It's your mom and stepdad who are breaking her heart. You are just the one who has to tell her. None of this is your fault. You are not responsible for the trauma inflicted on anybody here. It's much easier said than felt, I know, but I can't articulate how strongly I believe this. Their trauma will involve you, but it will never be because of you. You're a good sister, a really, really amazing sister. And I think that's the part that the OP is conflating. She's afraid to tell the sisters, or at least she was before the update, because she doesn't want to break their hearts, but this situation is not because of her. Even if it does involve her, even though that might feel like it's one and the same, it's not. I don't know if you can really ever get over that sort of betrayal from both your mom and your stepdad, if it could ever be normal again. And even after a few years pass, how can you go to a holiday event, see your mom, and just pretend like everything is normal when you know in the back of your head that she was basically just trying to sell you off to her husband? And probably the most shocking part of the whole thing is even after he gets caught, and he doesn't deny anything, he calls the OP a floozy and said that she should have had no problem doing what he asked. So even after all that, he still thinks that he's in the right. The situation is sad. I feel bad for the daughters. I hope they can stay with the aunts or the grandparents and not have to go back into that environment. But let me know what you would do if you were the OP in this situation. How would you handle something like this when it seems like most people aren't taking what you're saying seriously, referring to the protective services they called, because you're stuck in this conundrum where you're considered a roommate, but your sisters haven't had anything happen to them, so they won't do anything. Where do you go from there? Let me know down below. My girlfriend of a year and a half just broke up with me to be with my roommate, and I just heard them through the wall. As the title says, we broke up. It was about 6 months ago, and it was semi-amicable. We broke up because she was developing feelings for my roommate. Admittedly, they are more compatible, and he's an upgraded version of me, so I can see why it happened. This isn't an evil thing. Both asked my permission to start dating, and they don't do any PDA, public displays of affection, while I'm around. I still consider them my friends, and I just want them to be happy. For the most part, they are quiet at night. If I really listen, I can hear what's going on, but generally, they save it for when they are alone, except for last night. We went out to the bar for his birthday, and they got pretty sloshed. I was the designated driver because I don't really drink. Anyway, last night we got home at close to 2 a.m. and all went to bed. I made sure they both got into bed, put water, Advil, and buckets out just in case. I then put my sleeping bags out for other people and did the same. As I was brushing my teeth, my ex walked in, hugged me, and said she was sorry. She thanked me for always being so nice, and she promised to help me find a new girlfriend when I was ready. When I finally got to bed, I could hear muffled talking, mostly about how great the night was. Then it got quiet, and then it started. I don't know how long it lasted, but it was louder than normal. I've been okay with the breakup until now. I'm glad they're happy, but last night I fell asleep crying. I woke up this morning, I made breakfast for everyone and started to clean up. Feel free to ignore this, I just needed to get this off my chest. I'm sad when I really think about the situation, but that's what I try not to do. Jumping into the future, there's an update. Taking everyone's advice, I announced that I was going to be moving out. My now ex-roommate pulled me aside and asked if it was because of his relationship. I told him yes, but I'm not going to make him sacrifice his happiness just for me. He decided to help me look for a new place, and we found one. It's a 1-bedroom apartment that is closer to my work. My landlord is my ex-roommate's family friend. After my ex-roommate explained the situation, I ended up getting a slight discount on rent for the first year. My ex-roommate and ex-girlfriend and a few other friends helped me move in. I had a housewarming party and was specifically asked that I not prepare anything. 7 people came over with dinner, dessert, and drinks. My ex-girlfriend and my ex-roommate also cleaned up after everyone finished eating. My ex-girlfriend stayed a bit later than everyone and apologized for putting me through everything. She said she didn't really think about how it made me feel. She told me that she's talked to a few friends about finding me someone and that she had set up a blind date for me. It was great. We've gone out a few times since our first date. The past few weeks have been the best in a long time. I've never really realized how bad my situation was. Obviously, everything isn't perfect, and I still have to work on my self-esteem and standing up for myself, but I'm in an infinitely better position than before. So, was I the jerk for how I handled this? I don't think most people on earth would be that patient or that understanding or even that forgiving because he's obviously hurt. The girlfriend finally recognizes at the very end that what she did hurt him, and she said that she didn't really think about how it made him feel. That's just a tough situation. To be okay with living like that for 6 months. That's how long he was there before finally deciding to move out after his girlfriend left him for his roommate. Oof. To be honest, this guy does sound like he has some self-esteem issues. The fact that he said said that this roommate is the upgraded version of him says a lot about how he sees himself and his own self-esteem, and hopefully he's able to work on that over time. But if this was you and it was your boyfriend or girlfriend that started dating your roommate, how would you deal with that situation? How would you handle it? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. I made my ex-boss lose $25,000 of his salary. I used to work at Wendy's as a manager. It was already a crappy job, but my general manager was nice and most employees were easy to deal with. All of this started when I was already working about 65 hours a week. I was offered a $100 bonus to work one of my only days off. I decided to do it, and later that week, before I had been paid, I was asked to come in again. I said this time I would like $150, as at this point I had worked almost 23 days without any days off. They said they'd do it, so I went in. Jump forward 3 weeks, I've been asking about my money for a while now. I am told by my general manager that I could speak to my district manager as he would be in later that night. The conversation goes like this. Me saying, hey, do you know what's going on with the bonus? I'm owed $250 with both the days. The district manager said, well, that's why I came here. The store's been having trouble making money. So basically, he's telling me that my performance isn't good enough. At this point, I'm working dinner rush and the whole night with me and 3 others, my girlfriend, best friend, and other friend that have grown close. The district manager says, your shift isn't making much money as the others. I'll tell you what, your drive time is higher. I respond and say, well, we're doing all we can. It takes extra time when we only have half the number of people with the same amount of customers. The district manager says, that ain't right. That's really no excuse. When am I going to receive my bonus? My district manager was a very sheepish man, so he is very obviously scared when he tells me this. He says, well, we can't give you a bonus until the revenue rises and drives the time going down. I am speechless at this point. The rest of the conversation was a blur. I grew up on the south side. You don't mess with people's money. A day passes and I've had time to collect myself and speak to my entire crew. Everyone agrees to walk out with me, so I call my district manager. The phone starts to ring, but then it cuts off. He declined my call, so I called him again and again and again. Finally, I just left him a voicemail. I said, look, Jacob, you need to talk to me. You have until 8:45 to call me back or all of night crew is done. At this point, it's 7:30. I go into my office and start watching my boss's email. She leaves it open and logged in. I figured he would probably email her before calling me. Around 20 minutes of watching this email and boom, an email pops up. It's titled, Emergency, Lonnie. This idiot put my name on the email, so of course I read it. Long story short, in the email was him trying to make sure my general manager was going to be ready to go to work. AKA, he wasn't going to call me or give me my money. So I get all my people together and we walk out, leaving everything out, all the meat, all the toppings, the fryer, everything. We left the Wendy's. The next day, I turn in my keys. About a week later, I'm called by my brother. I say, what's up? My brother says, Jacob lost all of his stores. He has to go back to Indiana. My brother worked at the store as well. If you don't know, district managers' pay is based on the amount of stores they have and how much they make. When he moved to Indiana, his wages got reduced from $65,000 a year to about $40,000 a year. All of this, just over $250. So, was I the jerk for planning a walkout on this Wendy's because my boss wouldn't pay me the money he owed me? Even if it ended up costing him $25,000. As soon as he said this all took place at Wendy's, I kept thinking about the "sir, this is a Wendy's" meme, but this isn't one of those cases where that applies. This is yet another situation where people try to save a buck and end up losing it all, when if they didn't have the money in the first place to pay out this bonus, then why would you tell him that he was going to get the money? To some people, that's the same thing as stealing, because at that point, it's his money. He did the hours, he did the work, and you told him he would get that extra money. So in order to save $250, cheating this guy out of his $250, they end up losing 100 times that amount of money, at least from the perspective of the district manager. Whoever owns those franchises could have lost a lot more. I've only ever seen a walkout happen once at a food place, and it was inside of a smoothie shop, and I missed all the context of what happened before, but when I walked in, I basically just heard some guy go, F this place, and he slammed his apron on the ground and ran out the door. I thought it was staged or it was a joke or something, but that guy never came back. I guess it's just sometimes when you push people to their brink and they're communicating with you that, hey, this is too much, and you keep pushing them, sometimes they will snap. Let me know if you've ever had an experience like that, and if so, submit your story, or if not, let me know what you would would do in the situation down below. Am I the jerk for canceling the entire trip after finding out that my husband hid my daughter's passports? My husband and I have been together for 3 years. He has 3 kids from his previous relationship. I have 1. She's the oldest at 17 years old. He's a dedicated man. He puts God first and loves everyone. My husband always complains that my daughter doesn't spend time with her step-siblings or him, but she has her reasons for that, and that is school, health issues, and work. She does her best to spend as much time with them as she can, but she, on the other hand, complains that her stepdad tells her to basically take on the role of a babysitter whenever she's with her step-siblings. My husband denied that and said that my daughter was making up excuses to not have to spend time with his kids. For this issue, I figured that a family trip is what the family needed to get together and spend more time around each other. My husband liked the idea, but said that his kids are now uncomfortable around my daughter because of her attitude and suggested that we let her stay home and have the house all to herself since that's what she always wanted. I told him it's best that we all go. He kept complaining until I snapped and I told him to stop. I booked, paid for the whole family. However, my daughter told me that she couldn't find her passport. We turned the house upside down looking for it, but we couldn't find it. My husband said maybe it was a sign from God that we should let her stay home so the trip wouldn't turn into a disaster. I ignored this comment, but later, while I was cleaning his office, I found the passport tucked away in the 3rd drawer under a ton of papers. I was floored by this. I confronted him with it, and he swore he had no idea why or how the passport got there. I checked the upstairs camera and saw him enter my daughter's room. That was it for me. I screamed my head off at him and then canceled the whole trip completely. He started arguing, saying that I overreacted and that he didn't want his kids to be miserable on the trip and that he was willing to apologize to my daughter if and when I reconsider my decision regarding the cancellation of the trip because my stepkids will be devastated. But I said it was final and that it was done. He became cold and distant and said that he wants to take some time to do some fasting and get some guidance from God about how he should deal with the disrespect and control that I had displayed lately. Am I the jerk for canceling it altogether? It sounds like the OP's observations about the stepdad are probably pretty spot on, that he just wants to use the OP's daughter to babysit his kids so he can do whatever he wants to do. The fact that he actually stole the passport and hid it in order to get what he wanted and then somehow still thinks that he was in the right is pretty concerning, because if a person like that can justify doing that, they can justify pretty much anything. It also seems like part of his justification for pretty much anything is saying that it's God's will. Him stealing and hiding the passport, oh, that's God's will, not his decision to do that to get what he wants. And at the end, he's only going to apologize if she reconsiders her decision. In the meantime, he's going to go see what God's will is by getting some guidance about how to deal with the disrespect. This just kind of sounds like a dangerous mindset to have in a partner that you're going to share your life with, the constant justification aspect of it. But maybe you see this totally differently, and if so, let me know down below in jerk or not a jerk and why. My cheating students thought that they had me fooled, but in the end, they fell right into my trap. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. I am a cancer researcher and a guest professor at a university school of medicine, teaching my specialty, imaging. Besides the usual acquisitions of medical images using MRI, CT, etc., imaging has a lot to do with image processing. Some days, I am just a glorified programmer / IT guy, and as anyone who has ever programmed anything will tell you, coding is a very personal activity. With enough experience, you can tell who wrote what just by looking at the lines. I'm also in my late 20s and I am not native to this country, and it is my first year as a guest professor. So some students look at me as this inexperienced, gullible foreign guy. As part of my module's grading, the students have to submit 2 reports that weigh 10% each of their final grade. These reports are about image processing and they have to code a fair bit. As usual, there are students that make an effort, some who do minimal work, and some that cheat and copy. As I was grading the reports, I noticed a small group of students who found reports from previous years online and literally copied and pasted those reports, changing only their name. It was a facepalm moment because those reports were not even good and they had a lot of errors. You see, in order to establish a baseline for my grading, I browsed previous year's reports so I knew what to expect from the students of this module. Naturally, I graded them all with a 0 and kept working my way through grading reports until I had left. Meanwhile, the students casually asked me in the halls how are the reports. Of course, I can't comment on that until I release the grades. One time, this dude, who copied from another report 98% match on a plagiarism checker, asks me when I will release the grades and comes up with this story that he worked really hard on his reports, that his exam hasn't gone so well, so he's hoping that the grade on his reports are enough to get a pass. I mean, submitting another person's work as your own is very wrong, but it was an online submission and impersonal. Right now, he was just lying through his teeth and to my face. I could feel my blood boiling, but I didn't lose my composure and decided to come up with a plan. I knew that my exam was the last exam of the semester, and that after that, the students usually go home or on family vacations while they wait for their grades to be posted online. So I graded the exams and input their grades into my Excel with their report grades. 4 students had 0 due to cheating on their reports, and if graded their reports with 50% of the max grade, they would barely fail the module, but they would fail nonetheless. So it was on. In order to be fair, I bumped everyone else's grades. A bunch of people with miserable reports ended up barely passing because of my grade bump, but even though the reports were bad, it was their own work and not copied from anywhere. You see, students are entitled to make an appointment to review their grades after publishing and before the grades are locked for the year. Basically, they sit with me, we go through their exam and reports, and their goal is to convince me to give them extra points in hope that they pass the module. I knew the cheaters would come. After all, they think they fooled me once already. They still have half the report's points to bargain for, so I just waited for their emails. Lo and behold, they write me the same day the grades go online, saying how hard they have worked on their reports and they don't understand how they only got a 50% and that they wanted an appointment. I was ecstatic. Sure, let's review your grades. Do you remember that my exam was the last one? Well, they were already on vacations, some very far away, and begged me for an appointment online. No can do. University policy. Moreover, you have 3 days to show up for your appointment, otherwise the grades are locked. Also university policy. So here they come, cutting their vacation short, catching planes, some spending hours in buses and trains to make it on time. I know what many of you are thinking. They come, I show them the plagiarism checker results, and reveal that I know it's not their work and send them on their way. Well, I considered that, but I had something better in mind. Those appointments usually take about 10 minutes. I show them their work with my notes on what's right and what's wrong, and then they try to find some inconsistencies in my grading and bargain for more points. I ain't giving you the opportunity. Mwahaha. So one by one, they sit with me individually and I go through their exams and reports. Remember that they copied the reports and copied bad ones with lots of errors? I ask questions, lots of them. Why did you do this? What is your reasoning for this? They don't know. It's not their work. They mumble random stuff because they don't know what to answer. Point by point, mistake by mistake, I explain why it was wrong, how it should be done, lecturing the same material that they had already been lectured on during class. I make it long. I make it boring. I make it painful. I spent hours with each one of them throughout those 3 days. They always came with the same,
I worked so hard on this,
and a little smirk on their face because they thought that it should really be easy to fool me. The gullible foreigner again. As the hours go by and I am walking through the errors one by one, I could see their expression change. Little by little, their hopes of passing slowly being crushed. And when they realized that I knew they cheated and I wasn't going to give them any extra points, at this point they would just try to cut the appointment short and leave, but I wouldn't let them. We need to finish the review of your grades. It's university policy. And I would just keep going, extending their misery for one more hour or two. It was legal torture, plain and simple. It was glorious. At the end, every single one of them left with a crushed soul look in their eyes and a fail in my class. They knew that I caught them, that I baited them and they fell for it. They ruined their vacation and their family vacations, spent money to travel back and forth, wasted precious summertime, got bored to death, and have nothing to show for it. And next year, they will have to repeat the module with me. I hope you enjoy your summer. See you next year. For a little more context, this was in the EU, not in the US. I took the matter to my boss, who is their course director, and he told me not to report them because the university wants to avoid any kind of legal action at any cost. I couldn't even accuse them of cheating. For those that are worried about my bumping the grades thing, I made a judgment call to bump some of the grades of some students who had a good exam score and their report grade was pulling them down. They clearly knew the topics and studied. Their report was just not very good. So I decided that if it wasn't for the report, they would pass, to bump it up a bit to allow them to pass. Most of them went from failing at 49% to passing at 50% on their overall final grade. So was I the jerk for setting up this trap to waste these cheating students' summer? In this story, I'm just surprised that the original poster here would spend his own time to go through all of this. I get that he was striking back by making them having to fly during their vacations and interrupting their whole summer, and that's a lot bigger of an expense than just sitting for a few hours in a room where he was already at anyway. But still, it's wasting a lot of your own time. But I guess that's kind of how a lot of revenges go. You end up getting back at somebody even if you get hurt in the process. It seems like overall there are teachers that take cheating really personally, and there are ones that don't take it personally at all because they figure people are always going to be cheating. I'm guessing since he's relatively new to this school, he's taking it more personally than he would if he was teaching there for over 10 or 20 years. But with all that said, he did accomplish what he wanted to accomplish, even though, as we found out in the end, he kind of had his hands tied behind his back because he wasn't allowed to pursue the whole cheating accusation part of it. He was able to focus on why the work that they copied was insufficient. But it makes me wonder, if he wasn't able to pursue the whole cheating part of it and report them because the school's afraid of lawsuits, then what would happen if the thing they chose to copy was a perfect 100% flawless report? Would they just get away with it by default? Because it seems like a lot of this towards the end was a series of bluffs. And what I mean by that is that he was focusing on what was wrong with the report they copied without directly saying that they copied it. So if you were the teacher in this situation and you found out that your students had cheated, what would you do? How would you handle it? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My girlfriend has been trying to get me fired from all my jobs. I am shaken. Please help me. I'm a 24-year-old male and I've been with my girlfriend, who's 29, let's call her Janice, for 2.5 years. I just finished my education when we started dating, and I have been doing all sorts of jobs since, sometimes 2 jobs at a time. I did this to expand my resume and gather job experience. I worked in cafes, bookstores, a library, a grocery store, and as an English tutor. Most of these jobs lasted about 3 to 5 months. My shortest stay was 2.5 weeks, my longest 8 months. But since I didn't have a hard time applying for new positions, I tried to block it out, though it was kind of eating me up internally. People called to complain about me. People left bad reviews about me. People used my employee Wi-Fi access to look up sketchy things on the internet under my name. Former employees called to inform them about me, right name and all, and much more subtle things too that I can't disprove. But I was too anxious to do anything about it. I just told my girlfriend. She comforted me. She supported me every time I got my life ruined by these people. But I kept going, though they kept finding me. Fast forward to this week. I currently hold a part-time position at a bakery. I've been working there for 2.5 months. It's going okay, but my manager approached me about something regarding our Google reviews. Someone was complaining about an employee, and their description of them could only really fit me. It was on a day where we were pretty short of staff, so I could have been the only person in the store on that day for all I know. Anyway, their review contained some pretty elaborate and nasty comments about me. This has happened on 1 or 2 of my jobs already. I told my manager that it was all pretty bogus and that someone had a vendetta against me, as it has happened before. She believed me and told me that she'll dismiss the comments. On my break, I checked out the review myself. Their username was kind of stupid. I'm not going to type it out here since I still work there, but I'll just call them McMyrtle, as it was in the same range of sounds kind of fake but not really. Anyway, I come home but I don't tell Janice about it. She has heard it all before, so I didn't see the point of complaining about yet another time I almost lost my position. We chat, all is well, and she leaves the room. Her phone is on the table and suddenly she gets a notification or an email of some sort from Google. I don't remember what it said exactly, but the pop-up read something along the lines of, McMyrtle, manager has responded to your review. My heart dropped. I've been trying to ignore it since. This was 2 days ago. It just fit in the picture of bad reviews. It fit in the picture of phone complaints my workspaces have received about me in the past. It fits in the picture of all the sketchy things that I've been fired for. Why would she do that though? I'm looking for an explanation. This literally can't be. She's the only thing keeping me sane. I don't know what to do. Jumping into the future, there is an update. Hello people who are still invested. A lot has been going on. First of all, yes, we broke up. That's why I'll be referring to her as my ex from now on. Anyway, let's start from the beginning. On Monday of the following week, I couldn't take the uncertainty anymore. I told my ex I needed her booking account to book a train ticket to visit my dad for a few days. She complied, and when she was in the shower getting ready for work, I booked my ticket and started looking through her emails. After some digging, I found an email to herself which contained a spreadsheet file. I sent the file to myself, printed it out, and took a screenshot. Why? The spreadsheet contained about every single piece of information about me that there was. Numbers, emails, passwords, work times, colleagues, their numbers, social medias, as well as some emails and passwords that she used for accounts to ruin my life with. Everything was on there, conveniently stored for her to ruin my life as efficiently as possible. When she left for work, I decided it would be best to immediately pack my stuff. Nothing that mattered would be left behind. I felt like a wanted man, like I was being hunted despite nothing being seemingly out of place. I called my boss, told her I would be taking some time off from work, and headed out to see my dad. Needless to say, he was the sanity that I needed. I cried about everything I saw. I panicked for a whole 2 days straight about how my life was ruined and I didn't know what to do. He had to sleep on the couch in the guest room because I was so scared of my ex coming in. He handled it like a champ. I love you, Dad. He called the police, a lawyer, and most recently a therapist for me because I was in the most horrible state of my entire life. We're currently sorting out the legal stuff. I haven't talked to my ex except for letting her know that it was over and that she is a sick psychopath. My dad handled the rest. I changed all my passwords and I'm now looking for a place to live. Sorry for the brief update. My mind is tangled. So, what should I do? The most obvious question that I have a feeling the OP is going to want to go back and get some closure from is, why did she do this? A lot of people have put out theories, but it seems like the two most likely reasons are probably she wants him to be dependent on her. She is older, if that makes any difference. And maybe she feels like if she keeps stunting him over and over again, he can't, I guess, get away from her. I mean, his exact words were, "She's the only thing keeping me sane." And after seeing what she's done in order to create this situation, it's almost like she's engineered the whole thing so that she is the only one keeping him sane from his perspective. The other popular theory, if she's totally out of touch with reality, is that maybe she's convinced herself that she's helping him by getting him out of all these jobs that she doesn't deem to be good jobs. She might justify this by saying that she doesn't want him to spend years at an entry-level job when he could instead get a better job that's not entry-level, that pays more money, that has more prestige. And maybe she rationalizes it by thinking if she keeps pushing him out of all these jobs, eventually he'll land on a so-called better job. But this is really twisted. I mean, the guy's already dealing with anxiety because he can't figure out why this keeps happening to him. He probably feels like he's cursed. He actually says in the original post, "I was too anxious to do anything about it. I just told my girlfriend and she comforted me. She supported me every time I got my life ruined by these people, but I kept going, though they kept finding me." If I had to guess, I would say the first theory is probably more likely, but let me know how you see this and what your theory is on this down below. What do you think would motivate her to do all this? Am I the jerk for installing a lock on the bathroom door after my brother-in-law kept barging in? I'm a 25-year-old female. My husband is 30 and my brother-in-law, who's 33, moved in with us after his divorce a few weeks ago. The problem is he started barging into the bathroom whenever I'm using it. He never knocks or anything. Another thing is he only does this when it's me in the bathroom and not his brother. I told my husband about what I noticed, but he laughed it off and called me paranoid. It was embarrassing because his brother would see me exposed and it made me feel uncomfortable. My husband said he spoke to him and he apologized, but he did it again. When my husband and I got married, we promised not to have locks or lock each other out of any room, so the bathroom didn't have a lock. I was really considering getting a lock, and I let my husband know that if his brother walks in on me on the bathroom one more time, a lock will instantly be installed. He didn't say anything. Well, yesterday, my brother-in-law walked in on me showering. He knew I would be in the shower, but barged in, claiming he needed to pee. I had enough, and I went out and got a lock and installed it. My husband got home, saw saw it and blew up on me, saying that I violated an agreement that we had and went against his wishes, being uncomfortable with locks in the house. He demanded I remove it and promised and guaranteed that his brother wouldn't walk in on me again, but I refused. He's been pissed about it since then and is giving me the silent treatment. For more information, I'm not close with my brother-in-law. My husband is. I don't even talk to him that much, and I barely ever sat with him at any gathering before he moved in with us. Jumping into the future, there is an update. So before I provide an update on the situation, it's worth noting that my brother-in-law used to do this with the bedroom too, but at least I'm not always exposed in the bedroom. So my husband came home and I told him the lock will not be removed until his brother leaves, and his reaction was to try and remove the lock himself and tell me to quit acting childishly. What I did was not shout or scream, but pack a bag and go to my mom's house for the next few days until this gets resolved somehow. On my way out, I saw my brother-in-law in the driveway smoking. He knew what the argument between me and my husband was about, but instead of stepping up to fix it, he offered to take me to my mom's house, saying that my husband could use some space from me. This made me cry the whole Uber ride to my mom's house. The reason I feel offended is because my brother-in-law tends to be hurtful when he talks about others. I did all I could to win his approval, but he thinks less of me and thinks I'm childish, just like my husband says. So, am I the jerk? When they first got married, they decided to have an agreement not to have locks in the house. That seems a little strange. Maybe that's something that people do normally, but I've never heard of that happening before. I'm guessing that one of them or both of them have had some issues with locks in the past, maybe something from their childhood or maybe something they think is going to happen. But even so, that agreement was probably made with the assumption that it would only be them in the house, not accounting for somebody who habitually just walks into the bathroom when they know that you're showering. I mean, that situation alone, how can the husband be okay with knowing that his brother is trying to sneak a peek at his wife while showering? And then he actually pees to completion while she's showering right there. Since the OP didn't mention it, I'm assuming that there's only one bathroom in this house, but that still doesn't make it any less weird. But let me know how you see the situation down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for saying that I won't coddle my infertile sister anymore? My sister Julie has tried to have a baby for 5 years. She's had a miscarriage 2 years ago, and outside of that has been unable to get pregnant. My heart hurts for her. However, one thing I don't agree with is how my family has handled it. We're not allowed to talk about babies around Julie. Any kids younger than 3 can't come to family events that she'll attend. She won't attend baby showers, baptisms, etc. The last one I understand, but the rest feels like overkill. I got pregnant last year and I told Julie first, and she reiterated her boundaries. I said and I understood. The first hurdle came with my baby shower. My mother-in-law was throwing it. I didn't expect Julie to come. Then my mom told me I shouldn't have had one, period, out of respect. I said that was ridiculous. She didn't have to come, so what did it matter? Only 3 people from my side of the family came to the shower. When my son was born, I posted a birth announcement on Facebook. My parents lectured me for this and said that it was going to hurt Julie. I said that she could block or mute me. They said I should make the effort. Julie echoed that if I cared, I'd stop. I ended up blocking her just to save drama. My aunt's 70th birthday party is next week. My husband and I plan to go, bringing our son. Julie called and asked if we were going. She then asked for me to get a sitter for our son. I said no. She doesn't want to miss the party. My aunt is one of the few people that agree that Julie's boundaries aren't fair and wants my son there, as she doesn't get to see him often. Julie got upset and started crying, saying that I was unfair. I finally snapped and asked what would happen when she got pregnant. Would we all be expected to shower her with love and attention that she's refused to show and give other people's kids? Will her baby be allowed to attend events? She said that that was different. I said no. I'm not coddling her anymore. My son exists. He's family. He's coming. She can decide if she wants to come or not. My parents yelled at me for being mean to Julie. They offered to pay for a sitter, but I said no. It's not even her house. Am I the jerk? This is really bizarre. I get that it bothers her, but it's not the fault of the people around you for having babies. The OP makes a very strong point here. When the sister ends up having a baby, how does she expect everyone else to act towards that baby? To just forget that she shunned all the other babies because she couldn't have a baby when she wanted to have a baby? And even though the OP didn't mention this part, what happens if the sister never ends up having a baby? Everyone else has to perpetually live in a state of tiptoeing around the sister, Julie, so that she's not upset for the rest of her life? When you break it down, everyone is enabling this coddling, but it's the parents that are really reinforcing it. So let me know how you see the situation down below on jerk or not a jerk, and why. A lawyer tries to scam a programmer into building a very complicated website for him by exploiting loopholes in their work agreement contract so that he would get the free labor but not have to pay. Luckily, the programmer saw this coming before it happened and executed his revenge masterfully. He put something in the code that would happen if the scammer camera lawyer tried to pull something, and that's exactly what happened. Here's how it went down. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. Before starting, I just want to say I'm from a small country in Europe. The laws and regulation here are different than in the United States. We have a government agency here that has everything to do with registering companies, and they do keep track of who's who. If you are a serial startup guy who leaves nothing but burnt ashes behind you, you cannot do it here. You have to register the owner and the members of the board of the company if there is one. If you have a prior history of failed companies or you've broken the law in some regard, you are blacklisted at that establishment. With that said, here's the story. I've worked as an independent contractor in the IT field for over 20 years, doing all manner of things from creating a simple HTML site to managing a big hotel's complete IT infrastructure. One of the many clients I had back in the day was a rental company, and I was coding a big-ish custom website for them. Now, I had heard a lot of warnings about not working with this guy that owned it. He had a reputation that he was sharp as a tack, backstabbing, and conniving. He was a lawyer after all, so I went into the partnership with that in mind. He wanted a new website for his renting gig where people would list their home for rent, renters would sign up and pay subscription to the site, and he would get the whole lot. Nothing out of the ordinary there. So we make a pretty good deal on paper, we sign it, and I get started on the project. Coding everything in PHP goes well, but he demands suddenly that I show him progress only a week into the process. He wants to see the website front end now. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I tried explaining to him that the front end work isn't scheduled to start until after 6 weeks of back end programming, and that I only had pure code to show right now. The contract we signed clearly states this. He then gets on his high horse and demands that I put everything on hold to do the front end first, design, and then program. I, being really young at the time and fairly naive, agreed to this without asking for it to actually be added to the contract as an addendum and start working on the design now. Now, the contract stated that I was given free reign of the design decisions as long as I maintained the same color scheme and used the same logo on the site. So I make a fast draft in Fireworks. This was back when it was a Macromedia product before the Adobe acquisition. And within 2 days I show him. He is not impressed and demands a different direction and sets up a list of demands. I, as always, aim to please the customer and just do what he wants. I design a new layout with his new list of demands, but he doesn't like that either. That's how the next 3 months go, a never-ending circle where he is never happy with anything. Now, close to 4 months into the project, he demands to see a working showcase of the back end. I point out that he himself changed the order how the project was being done and had demanded that I do the front end design first instead of the back end as stated in the contract, which he now turns to me and says, yes, the contract we both signed says you will have a working back end to show me at the end of the month. If you don't honor that, I will have to take my business elsewhere and seek compensation for your lack of professionalism. Okay, now I have 12 days to do a back end for the site. I get a friend to help me out and we work tirelessly through a weekend, and I have a good base to work from in 9 days. Mind you, at this point he has only paid the security on the contract, about 5% of the total price, and has shielded himself from paying by hiding behind, well, if you can't honor the contract, why should I? Finish X work and I'll pay you as per the contract. Remembering now all the warnings I heard about this guy, I decide to add a special function to the code just to be safe. More on that later. So now it's the end of the month. We have a front end design he is okay with, a back end that has been finished to about 85% of what is required according to the contract, and I still have 1 month left to finish everything else. Time for show and tell. Since I was working on this development, I was running it on my own dev server and showed him this on a browser on his computer. I mentioned to him that since I only had 512 kilobytes per second upstream from the server, it might lag a little, but it wouldn't when it would be put on the production server he has his website on at his hosting company. He says that's okay and the demonstration goes on. As I'm showing him the site, both front end and back end, I can see he's immensely happy with it. Although he would never say so out loud, he's trying to hide his smile that pops up regularly, and his eyes gleam with all the added ways he can now start making money from it. Anyway, he now says it's way too slow, this is wrong, that is wrong, blah blah blah. He says, I want you to put it up on my production server and see how the speed is. I say, okay, no problem, I can make that happen. Please pay 50% of the contract and I'll get right on it. So I wait a few days and then I get an email from him where he includes a forwarded message from the bank detailing a transaction from him to me in the amount of the 50% I asked for. So I push the system to his production server so he can take a look at it under beta.hisdomain.tld. I then sent him an email stating that he can try the system with the supplied credentials. What he doesn't know is that I knew he had been fishing around for another programmer to do this project, to pick up from a lazy deadbeat who couldn't do anything right, as he put it. So I knew he would most likely be trying to screw me. What I also suspected was the email that he sent me with the transaction proof was a fake, which it ended up being. This is where I get the revenge 3 separate ways. Pro revenge number 1. Remember that small function I mentioned? Well, what it did is if user X, his user, tries to remove user Y, my administrative account, from the system without one setting being changed in the configuration first, the system will first delete and then purge the database and then remove all the documents in the web root. Well, not 5 minutes after he reads the email from me, he does just that. He tries to delete my admin user from the system to lock me out. Guess who has nothing of the project left? He does. Pro revenge number 2. Since it is considered forgery to spoof an email, specifically from a bank, I sent the information to the authorities and he goes under investigation by both the police and the bank lawyers. And lastly, pro revenge number 3. I sold this system to a competitor of his for a better price than originally contracted to him. And last I knew, he was now blacklisted from owning a company, as well as he lost his rights to work as a lawyer. I only got that 5% he paid at the beginning, and for working for just over 5 months on this project, that hardly is anything. But the knowledge of his demise will keep my heart warm for the rest of my life. Am I the jerk? So before I talk about this story, you guys have probably noticed my voice is kind of strange. I've actually lost my voice, but now it's recovering, so the rest of this video is probably going to sound a little bit different. Before, just a couple days ago, it was a lot worse. I tried recording this a bunch of times, but you could barely hear me or understand what I was saying. So even if it sounds weird now, it's still a lot better than it was even just 2 days ago. I think I was just making too many weird voices back to back to back. So cross your fingers and hopefully we're back to normal ASAP. Going back to the story, I just can't understand people that try to hire other people with the intent on scamming them as their primary objective. We didn't know it until the end of the story, but he was already trying to find somebody to replace the OP here who he thought was a lazy deadbeat. And if anything, the OP, the original poster here, was exactly the opposite. Not only did he go above and beyond doing what he was supposed to do, he even reorganized it in a way that was really difficult to do. The lawyer guy here tried to engineer this so that the OP would fall on his face and not be able to complete it in time, and thus the lawyer would say you violated our contract, but the original poster here made it work even with those conditions. He just had to get an extra hand. So it surprises me that even though the lawyer went into this with the intent on scamming the OP, why would he still try to scam him when he did actually jump through all these hoops and make it happen? If he's planning on paying the second guy, whoever he was going to bring in to replace him, then why not just pay the first guy the full amount that he agreed to? The answer to that is probably just he was going to scam the second guy too. So if this was you in this situation, let me know how you would handle it down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for telling my adopted sister to go back to her true family? I know how the title sounds, but if you are not willing to listen to the full story before commenting, then don't comment at all. Your perspective about the situation might change. Being the only child in the family was awesome. I got to have my own room, friends, iPad, etc., which I am now obligated to share with my so-called sister. Yes, even friends. They adopted her 1 year ago for a reason I till now fail to understand, but I strongly believe is because I was not good enough for them. I'm really hurt because they never ever asked me if I wanted another sibling. I just had to accept the fact that I suddenly have a younger sister and should now share everything I have with her and treat her as a part of the family. How am I supposed to do that? I can't just start feeling close to her, and the fact that I am forced to involve her in all of my plans infuriates me and makes me hate her even more. Today my friends and I decided to challenge ourselves to stay awake all day by doing many different sorts of things that would keep us from getting bored. Obviously, since we share the same room, my sister had heard this and told me that she would like to join the activity. I was honestly hoping I could finally do something without her, but of course, she had to ruin it. I told her no, and she said she is going to tell my parents about it. I then got mad and told her to get the heck out of my house and go back to her biological family. Excuse my language. Her voice then changed and she told me she doesn't know where they are, but I told her to shut her mouth and not get emotional with me because I really had it with her. She left the room and I started crying because of how stressed she makes me, but realized I should wipe my tears fast because my parents can't see me like this. Otherwise, they will believe my adopted sister's words and I'll get punished for it. She obviously told them, but I denied what I said. I normally don't lie, so they believe my words and are now talking to her. Obviously without being harsh, and will still not punish her because God forbid they they treat my adopted sister wrongly. So, am I the jerk for the way I reacted? This person sounds awful. What a horrible thing to tell someone. The OP here is locked into this weird egocentric mindset where they think that everything is about them, and sharing anything is such an inconvenience that they would rather tell their adopted sister to go back to their biological family. The saddest part is that she said that she didn't know where they are. When you're that young, how do you even respond to that? If you've ever grown up in a situation where you're living with another person's family, it can be rough, like you're a second-class citizen, even if you are also a kid in that same house. You'll never get gifts when they get gifts, you'll never get praise when they get praise, and most of that is par for the course. But this is taking it to the next level because of how oblivious the OP is here. Oblivious to the existence of anyone else besides herself. So is she the jerk? Yes, of course she's the jerk, but let me know if you've ever experienced or seen anything like this in your own life. And as always, you can always submit your own stories via the link down below in the description. My boss just asked me not to wear my normal pants to work, and I've never been angrier. I wear normal pants to work. Our dress code is business casual, and I've gotten myself sized by a reputable tailor. All my slacks and chinos are from normal brands you'd find at Macy's and are normal/relaxed fit. However, yesterday my boss called me into her office and told me I would no longer be allowed to wear the pants I normally wear to the office and would have to wear something less revealing. Apparently, my bulge is inappropriate for the workplace. I am normal sized. I actually measured it to make sure I wasn't crazy. I'm pretty close to the US average. Would a woman with large honkers be told that she can't wear anything but baggy clothing? Would she be told by her boss that she must wear nothing but restrictive sports bras to work? I doubt it. Especially in my workplace where women 2 seats down from me wear far more provocative clothing than my slacks. I asked her, what should I wear instead? These are my size. And she said, just go buy something looser or get a bigger size. I am not rebuying my entire collection of work pants. Go ahead and report me to HR. Let's see them try and fire me for having too much bulge. To clarify, I am aware that women have been told to cover up quite a bit in the workplace. I'm not dismissing that, just highlighting the very visible/double standard of bodily expression in my own workplace. If you really want to get specific and see a picture of the pants, I can't post it here just in case, but I'll post it over on the Am I the Jerk Twitter and Am I the Jerk Discord. It's probably not even worth checking out. There's really not much to see, but it's there if you want to see it. The original poster added, note that my member is sitting to the right of the zipper relative to the viewer. Then there was an update from the future. My boss demanded that I replace all my pants and then told me she needed to supervise me while I got the replacements. She is now on administrative leave. This is an update to the bulge saga. I made a post a bit back about an insane demand from my boss. Essentially, she told me that my pants were too revealing and that they showed my bulge. They do not. She then told me that I needed to replace my work pants. To recap what advice I got from my original thread, here it is. Go talk to HR. Never talk to HR. Go talk to a lawyer. A lawyer will waste your time. Your pants are fine. You need new pants. She wants to bang. She hates you. After dwelling a little bit on my options, I settled for a middle-of-the-road approach. I contacted 2 well-known lawyers in my area and got a consultation from them about my situation. They both thought that while I was harassed, the case wasn't bulletproof as there was little evidence and no pattern of abuse. They then also warned me about going to HR without any evidence, as it can cascade into me losing my job in unexpected ways. Fine. Since I needed evidence and a pattern of abuse, I first wanted to read up on what standards my company has set for managers when it comes to dealing with harassment. I requested from our online learning catalog to take the harassment and tough conversations course that are normally required for only managers. In the tough conversations module, there was a scenario where a male supervisor needed to ask a female employee to correct her work outfit as it did not meet the company's dress code. The module, in plain English, states the supervisor is not to intervene and to refer the issue to HR. I assume that was the inverse. A female supervisor reprimanding a male's outfit would follow the same standards. I then sent an email to my boss asking her to follow up on our previous conversation. I wrote, to boss, I want to clarify some things regarding our previous conversation. Please confirm whether or not my understanding of your statements is correct. My pants violated our dress code by being too tight and revealing my bulge. The issue pertains to all my pants, not a specific subset of my wardrobe. This is a requirement from management and not a request. Please get back to me. Sincerely, OP. It took over a full workday, but the response I got was, to OP, yes, I did tell you to fix your wardrobe. This is not a request. Boss. I immediately reply, to boss. If management is demanding that I replace such a large amount of work clothing, it must be done at the expense of the company. Please let me know if this soonest as possible, as we will have to work something else out if it isn't. Sincerely, OP. And her response later was, OP, this can be done, but I must be with you to supervise your shopping. Check my schedule for my availability. Goodness gracious, suddenly the she wants to bang theory seemed less crazy. I backed up the emails to a personal account and sent everything to HR. Less than 2 hours later, I received a phone call asking me to come into HR immediately and drop my work unless it was time critical. I complied. I was told that they were taking this matter very seriously and that I should take the rest of the day off. I came back to work today and my boss is gone. I was told right before lunch that she had been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation and that I shouldn't worry. It's against company policy to engage in any form of professional retaliation. I sit here now like a king on a porcelain throne, telling you about my victory during my post-lunch dump. Bye-bye, boss lady. So, am I the jerk for essentially getting my boss fired when she told me to buy less revealing pants for work? I don't really buy the theory that the boss is into the OP here, because if she was, why would she have him buy less revealing pants? Unless she was absolutely certain that he was going to ask to use company money to buy these pants and that she knew she was going to be able to accompany him alone while they were shopping. But that would be a long shot. The chances of it going down exactly like that don't seem very likely. Most people would either just buy the pants or go straight to HR. So those two goals seem like they're in conflict and make sense for that being the actual reason, because she wants to get him alone, but that's very unlikely, at least via this method, and she's telling him to be less revealing, which if she liked him, I would assume that she wouldn't, unless she's just getting jealous because he's flaunting in front of other coworkers in her mind. I think the much more likely thing is this is just some sort of power trip where she overstepped her bounds. The feeling of being able to exercise power like this for arbitrary things is probably what she was going after, but maybe you see this completely differently. Let me know how you interpret this down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My landlord wants to fine and evict me for doing the deed with my partner in my apartment. He cites illegal activity. So this is a bit of a weird one, so please bear with me. I rent an apartment from a man who lives down the street. It's a nice enough apartment, and up till now I've had very few issues. The problem is that he's rather conservative, and I'm rather gay. Once he found out that my boyfriend wasn't just a friend who spent a lot of time with me, he tried to bar him from coming over. I told him to pound sand, as it goes. Now he sent me a letter stating that effective immediately there shall be a $250 fine every time I, quote, commit the sin of homosexuality in my apartment. If I refuse to sign the addendum, he claims he will file to evict me due to breach of the lease, specifically the clause that the premises shall not be used for illegal activity. He cites Massachusetts State Code that criminalizes fornication outside of marriage and crimes against good nature, which he insists means male-male relations. The statute does not define it any further. I looked them up and they are evidently real crimes. I know they're not enforceable by any stretch, but I technically have done illegal activity in my apartment. I really don't want to move early. The lease started in September or have an eviction on my record. I know this seems absolutely silly, but the fact that they are still technically crimes in the book gives me a little pause. Do I need to take this seriously, or can I start coming up with more ways to say pound sand? What should I do if he does try to take further action? Jumping into the future, there is an update. I feel like people assumed a much worse picture of my landlord, people telling me to buy cameras, etc. He's a nice enough person, but has some very problematic views. He grew up in rural Arkansas, I think, that or Alabama, and then came to Massachusetts later in life. This was his first time being a landlord, so he still had the idea in his head that it was his house, so to speak. That, coupled with the fact that up until now he'd avoided even talking with people who were openly gay, and that led to a lot of ignorance. I know some of you are hoping that I'd screw him over for all he's worth or torment him with daily updates of my gay agenda, but alas, I decided to take a calmer approach and it seemed to work. Yesterday I sat down with him and first laid out various information that you guys helped me find. Everything from orientation being a protected class, treble damages, and the fact that those old laws are 100% completely unenforceable. He realized very quickly that he was in the wrong and that he had messed up bad. He also admitted that he didn't even know what he defined as the sin of homosexuality or how he'd enforce the fine. He just knee-jerk reacted to the shocking news. For him. We ended up chatting for about 2 hours then, and it started with me dispelling a lot of misconceptions about gays. Some of his notions were comically bad. Like, if I weren't having a conversation with him, I'd think he were a caricature. He's a lot older than me and his kids recently moved across the country, and he was renting their house for him. So I think he had some notions of being a father figure to me and thinking that he could lay down the law or set me straight. He seemed genuine and seemed to be legitimately concerned for me and my soul. I reminded him to hate the sin and not the sinner, and that seemed to resonate with him. He still doesn't agree with my lifestyle, but he's willing to accept it. He seemed to be earnestly trying, and in my mind that counts for a lot. He agreed to write both me and my boyfriend a letter of apology, which I will be keeping copies of in case this matter comes up again and needs to go to court. The past few days have been super stressful and it seems to be resolved. If things go well, I might even potentially renew the lease come September. I'll still be on guard for any shenanigans, but I think I'll leave the issue where it lies for now. If this was all a ruse or him backpedaling, I'll go at him with everything I can in the future. But for now, I'm satisfied. I truly appreciate everyone that offered advice, moral and immoral support. So what do you think I should have done? I don't know anything about state codes in other states, but that is pretty surprising that is supposedly a law even though it's not enforceable. I actually googled that state and crimes against nature, and on the malegislator.gov website there is a section called Section 34 Crime Against Nature, and the only thing it says on that page is Section 34, whoever commits the abominable and detestable crime against nature, either with mankind or with a beast, shall be punished by imprisonment in the state prison for not more than 20 years. So that's it. That's the definition as far as I can find. The beast part makes it pretty clear that it's against bestiality of some sort, but the mankind part, you could really interpret that however you want. I would say that's pretty open-ended. This is something that probably needs a little more clarification in the modern age as to exactly what does this mean. Otherwise, you're going to keep having situations like this where a landlord will cite it or somebody will cite it without them being able to enforce it because it's an outdated law.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.